Hello and welcome back to the Golden Fanfics. I hope you enjoyed today's very special video. What if Deku was Chainsaw Man? Made by Just Low. And the story will be linked in the description like always. So leave a like, subscribe, and comment for another part. Now let's get into the fanfic. The Devil You Know. Chapter 1. The nauseating cacophony cleaves through her tympanum, shredding the eardrum. It's a sensory phenomena of chaotic sound that pierces her ears. The visceral noise is so jarring that it continues to ring in her ears even after they've been ruptured. She'll never forget the obstreperous fortissimo for as long as she lives. She'll always remember the wet warmth of a liquid touch when she tries cupping her ears in a futile attempt to muffle the pandemonium. She will forever see the crimson color of blood on her hands after holding them out in front of her to see why they had become so damp. The poor girl shall know better than anyone else what Hell's Gate sound like when they screech open for the devil to come out and play. Born with a quirk that grants her organic ear jacks, Jiro earned her placement as one of UA's entrance examinees. The hero school candidate had rushed into the physical portion of the test filled with vim vigor. There had been a level of confidence only to find as young nativity. She was all ears when listening to the rules, so she had expected taking out mechanical faux villains to be a cakewalk. It wasn't so easy. Suddenly, the earth shattered, fracturing her valor at the same time. Plates began to shift. Whatever didn't break apart had bent so that a colossal robot constructed to ward off testers could rise out of the ground. Applicants fled immediately. Hyoka was about to join them. But then she saw the brunette girl pinned under rubble from where the monstrous mechanism had excavated itself. The rumbling robot was about to roll over the collapsed contender with its treaded chain track. Hyoka closed her eyes, instinctively turning her head to look away so as not to witness the inbound gruesome accident. And then she heard it. The abrasive roar of a chainsaw that came before the scything rip of chattering steel. The grating rip of metal sheeting reverberated as the sharp piercing sound also stabbed into the gigantic golem. A shrill shriek of steel rang out as it was torn apart in a tumultuous frenzy. And even now, the cataclysmic caterwauling continues. There's no escape from the rampaging raucous that decimates the droid. The behemoth buckles as it's torn apart at the base, metallic fibers creaking and wires sparking with popping embers from where the steel shielding gets mauled. Screeching comes from the machine as though it's wailing in torment. Never had Hyoka in her entire life heard something so awful. Never had she seen something so awful either. When she opens her eyes she sees it. Elongated saw blade slick black with oil protrude from what looks like something straight out of hell, metal teeth tipped a dark shade of red. It takes Hyoka a moment to realize the blood came from the source of the chainsaw bars and not from the robot. Dried and crusted scarlet specks dot the bare chest of a boy's fit physique, a ripcord made of copper swing from his sternum. The grotesque figure has a green motor for a head, engine parted at the mouth where fangs are bared, indicator lights glow a bright yellow hue, eyes fuel just as much as the chainsaw attached to the base of his head. Arms split down the middle allow for additional chainsaw bars that are being swung haphazardly at the automaton that he downed. Hearts get thrashed around, the robot's innards coming loose from the consistent strident strikes of the saw blades. Steel squeals as the chainsaw's teeth grate against it, carving it downwards and then upwards. The malformed boy relentlessly hacks at the opposing metal, harsh noises and shrill sounds, sending shockwaves through the beaten bot. Weakened whines escape the machine as it's chopped to its core. When the slasher severs anything remaining between him and the faux villain's power source, he skewers the apparatus hard. The chainsaws protruding from each of his arms stay embedded as he raises the core reactor out from its circuitry. In one fluid motion that serves as a fatal finishing move, he hoists the robot's key component over his head and begins dragging the chainsaw attached there downwards through the hardwiring. Despite how excruciating the devastating din was to her heightened sense of hearing and how hysterically horrified she was to watch the vicious laying of the massive machine, Hyoka has to admit that it was a pretty fucking hardcore takedown. No matter the terrifying chainsaw visage and the savagery of the droid's disfigurement, the malformed boy had rescued the brunette girl that would have otherwise been crushed. Hyoka can't help but admire the heavy metal approach. She finds herself studying the stranger's appearance, blown away by how gnarly the destructive blades are. When her eyes roam to the boy's bare chest, a blush the same shade as the blood there begins to fade in. Hyoka's onyx eyes widen and the heat in her face subsides. She realizes there's blood. A lot more than before. Last time she checked, machines don't contain DNA in them. Which can only mean. The feverish feeling of queasiness overwhelms the girl, nearly making her double over with the urge to vomit. The major spillage of blood came from the boy, the severed parts of his arms and exposure of his head, ripping flesh and skin tissue for the chainsaws to function. In order for the cutting mechanisms to operate, they constantly shred his own muscle fibers. The blood leakage is an extreme side effect of the liquid's utilization as fuel. It's no wonder that the boy's pigmentation has become pallid. He's lost a major amount of the vital body fluid. Kyoka studies him closer, seeing now that his body is trembling. Noticing the way that the fatigued figure wobbles on his shaky legs, Kyoka turns to call out for help. Her earjacks sway with the pivotal motion of her head. It's hard to judge how loud she's shouting with her hearing still wounded, "Hey. Somebody." But she doesn't need to worry about anyone not coming to her call, since someone has already arrived, Onyx eyes landing on a short-statured woman wearing a white coat that billows in the wind like a cape. If not made evident by the large syringe that the lady is using as a cane or the regular-sized needle poking out of a netted bun like a hairpin, Kyoka is confident that the senior is the school's nurse, judging by the way that she hands vitamin gummies to examinees. Relief settles through the girl's system when she sees her elder getting nearer. Her violet hair swishes with her earjacks as she turns her head back towards the boy. Much to her awe, the demonic face is gone and the chainsaws have retracted. She figures a transformation must have taken place while she was looking away. In place of motorized metal is an unruly mess of green curls. Instead of yellow lights, there's an emerald glow to the boy's eyes. An otherwise plain face holds two sets of freckles that make up a diamond formation on each cheek. At first glance, the basic facial features would have her giving no second thought to the fellow teenager. However, she's been giving him more than a simple surreptitious peek. The girl may as well be ogling him, captivated by the shift in appearance from predatory ferocity to docile innocence. Staring at him for as long as she has to admit that she finds him kinda cute actually. The blush dusts Kyoka's cheeks, applying more pink than her makeup. The girl's stare isn't just drawn to the shirtless boy's face, but also his well-defined muscles. Her onyx eyes are bound to pop out of their sockets at the rate that they've been broadening. She realizes as the school nurse walks past her. Oh, no. He's hot. Kyoka only registers that she voiced her thoughts aloud when the nurse casts her a sidelong sly smile. The girl's earjacks tangle themselves as she becomes flustered, worried that she may have also been heard by the boy himself. However, that doesn't seem to be a problem considering he's fallen flat on his face, having passed out from blood loss and rendering himself unconscious. Kyoka winces, hoping he didn't land too hard and bruise his face. Yue's nurse tuts with each disapproving shake of her head. The elder woman prods the boy's body with her specialized cane, taking in his sorry state and formulating a diagnosis based on the mess. Another reckless kid with too much spunk, she sighs before crouching down to his level. Looks like I've found this year's Toshinori. Kyoka silently wonders which hero with that name could the experienced elder be referring to. The medical practitioner rolls the bloody body over before she plants a kiss on the unconscious boy's forehead. Through lip contact, the elder woman's quirk is able to heal people's injuries and illnesses. Kyoka catches on upon witnessing the ability in action. The lady was able to land her role as Yue's nurse by being a heroine of her own. Kyoka finally recognizes the woman as Recovery Girl. But Recovery Girl is still much too occupied with tending to the boy who overexerted himself to notice Kyoka's starstruck stare. The old heroine uses her cane as a crutch to stand back up, while medbots lift her patient up onto a gurney. She watches with censorious care as the boy stirs in his state of unconsciousness. What is it that man is always calling them? But upon closer examination, her gaze turns tender, problem child. Sharing Recovery Girl's line of sight, Kyoka can't help but agree with the woman. This boy is going to cause a lot of problems. Chapter 2. A strange chance occurrence. A peculiar behavioral habit. Or, for lack of a better term than those words, a quirk. Humans and animals alike began developing odd characteristics unique to them long ago. Superpowers. Abilities. It started in King City of China, where a baby manifested the astonishing meta-capability to radiate light from its body. Now, a boy can sprout a tail. A girl could develop a pink skin pigmentation. As such, the orange dog the size of a bread loaf may as well have a chainsaw protruding from its cute little face. The dog's tail is much thinner than any other dog's, and yet, it wags just the same. It's without fur, a wire wrapped in leather that creates a swishing sound every time it takes a swipe at the air. Left, and then right. Back and forth. At the end of its tail is a handle too small for a hand to grab. It is, however, the right size for a child's pinky finger to slide through. It fits just like a ring on Izuku Midoriya's stubby appendage. It's not unnatural for animals to have quirks. After all, the principal of UA is an animal with above average human intelligence, and that's the most prestigious hero school in all of Japan. So, Izuku isn't afraid when he comes across the pastel orange dog with a chainsaw sticking out of its head. He's more so amazed by the prospect of a creature having a quirk. Especially when it's as interactive as using its tail like a pulley system to activate the chainsaw's movement. What is far more peculiar in this world is that the young boy is without a quirk. Even the boy's appearance is rather plain, completed with a face full of freckles. The duality of the creature and Izuku Midoriya is evident so long as they're beside one another. That's what makes Izuku love the stray he's stumbled upon even more. The dog to him is a discovery unlike any other. Luckily for the freckled child, the equally little critter has taken a liking to him as well. Curiosity twinkles in each of their eyes as they study each other. The bond between boy and dog begins just like every other. Izuku takes the stray home, hoping to convince his mother to allow him to keep it. He carries the orange mud in his arms, presenting it like a piece of treasure. When Izuku Midoriya sees the animal that her son has brought to her, she can't help but be wary of it. As a concerned mother, and an overprotective one at that, she already has ramifications about how dangerous it is having a literal chainsaw mounted to its head. Not to mention it's a wild animal, undomesticated for all she knows, with or without the chainsaw. Oh, Izuku, sweetie. She softens her tone to be as delicate as she can. She knows it'll be disappointing for him to hear that he can't keep it, so she plans to let him down easily, at the very least. Seeing how bright the green shimmers in his pleading puppy eyes though, Inko hesitates. Izuku hardly asks for anything. He's such a sweet boy, always kind to her and everyone he meets. Doesn't every boy deserve a pet? She wonders. Her reconsideration will have to be a carefully thought out one though. The last thing she wants is for her little Izuku to get hurt. Inko's eyes settle on the dog that her son is clutching tightly to his chest. Izuku clings to the animal like a lifeline, hugging it closely to his heart. The strange colored critter gazes up at her, meeting her stare with as equally innocent eyes as her son. Its thin wire for a tail flicks back and forth, wagging happily in the Midoriya's company. Izuku did manage to carry the animal all the way home without harming himself. If the creature were truly dangerous as she fears, it would have likely already bitten or scratched him when being picked up. The chainsaw is pointed away from her son, the way he handles the dog extremely cautious. It's so difficult saying no to the combination of such a cute duo tag teaming her with puppy eyes, one literally from a puppy. Inko sighs, unable to refuse her son's happiness by denying the welcoming of a new family member. That being said, she still has to keep her boy safe as his mother. If she's going to allow the animal to stay with them, there comes a small caveat. You can keep it, she pauses to let Izuku finish cheering before adding, but. Izuku cocks his head, ear catching the word before his brain registers that there's more. Only if it stays in the backyard. At least until we're able to bring it to a vet, Inko settles on the condition she's presented. She's still uncertain of how safe the stray is, and would like to proceed with caution. Izuku nods along, well-mannered and understanding, he accepts the compromise. Deal. He celebrates with a little hop before twirling the dog around in a giddy display of affection for it already. The small canine yaps along to his laughter, creating a happy symphony that has Inko giggling with them before long. Thanks, Mom. Izuku flashes a smile so bright that it'd be blinding to anyone unaccustomed to seeing it so often. Inko feels her cheeks lifting into an equally large smile. Alright, she places a gentle hand on his head to hold him in place. It's tough raising a boy alone at such a rambunctious age. Go wash up now. Dinner will be ready soon, she steers him towards the bathroom, and he sets the new family member down before running off. She suddenly realizes that their new pet will also need food. Kibble goes on the shopping list for tomorrow, but in the meantime, she heard that rice and eggs is perfectly edible for dogs. She prepares some to feed the canine her son brought home. Ah. Inko sighs to herself before adding to the list that she'll also need to pick up dog dishes. She supposes they'll also need to give it a dog collar. And a name so she can call it something other than it. Inko will wait for her son to get back for that one. He's the one that brought the dog home in the first place. He should be the one to name it. Inko glances at the dog from her peripheral vision. It curled itself up in a small bowl right where Izuku left it, waiting patiently for his return. At least it's well-mannered. She wonders if it happened to have a previous owner who had perhaps trained it to be. Inko tuts to herself as she clicks the pen to write another thing to add to her shopping list. The poor thing will need a doggy bed to lay in instead of on the floor. She glances out the window. The weather is warm enough that it should be fine sleeping outside just for tonight. Though she does feel bad making it do so. Inko adds a note to get a few chew toys and bones to make up for it. The rice cooker beeps to let her know that it's finished. Eggs don't take very long to scramble either. So the dog is served its meal long before the Midoriyas have theirs. When Inko squats down to set the bowl of food down, she takes the chance to get a closer look at the animal. Even with a chainsaw jutting out of its skull, it really is quite cute. The tiny creature timidly starts to eat its mixture of rice and eggs, drawing closer to the woman. Inko tilts her head to the side, green hair leaning with gravity. Studying the strange colored critter, she reaches out a hand to pet its fur. The dog doesn't flinch, growl, or snap. It allows her to run her fingers through its coat. So soft and sweet. It reminds her of her little Izuku and his fluffy hair. Oh crap. She's starting to love the animal just as much as her son. Inko chuckles, realizing that the decision to keep the dog as their pet was inevitable. When Izuku trots back to the kitchen, Inko stands up straight, trying to hide the fact that she was getting close to the dog. She clears her throat with a faint cough while facing away from him, returning to the oven. So, Izuku. She hears him slide out a chair to sit down. What should we name our new little friend? Izuku hums as he tries to think of an answer, so loud that one might consider the noise obnoxious, but Inko knows better. How about Dogmite? He shouts his suggestion with childish pride. Inko tries to hold back a laugh, not sure how to help him cope with his hero worship or how she'll explain that such a ridiculous name is unsuitable. But she fortunately doesn't have to. Izuku looks down at the dog to see it looking up at him, meeting his gaze. He gauges the animal's reaction. Neither he or Inko are expecting the mutt to make a deadpan expression, complete with a sweat drop and all. Oh. You don't like that, boy. Izuku second guesses the name he's going to pick out. Inko pauses, realizing that her son has figured out the animal's gender somehow. She shakes her head. He's probably just guessing. Before Izuku can come up with another All Might themed name, Inko blurts out her own suggestion. How about Pachi? It's a pretty common dog name, like Spot. Perhaps, even a bit plain. People have often called Izuku rather plain, so maybe Pachi is fitting for his pet. It'd be better than Dogmite at the very least. Pachi? Izuku tests the name on his tongue. His face scrunches a little like the taste in his mouth is sour. He does a little reinventing of the kanji, Pachu, Pachia, Pachio. Before finally settling on, how about Pachita? The dog perks up a bit, yapping in acknowledgement. Izuku's mouth goes agape in awe, eyes sparkling at the sight of his pet agreeing with his name suggestion. You like Pachita? Izuku asks. The dog barks as though in confirmation. Pachita. Pachita Pachita. Izuku cheers the name like a chant, and the dog, now deemed Pachita, continues to bark in equal elation. And that's how the dog's name was decided. Pachita became a member of the Midoriya family that day. And the thing about Midoriyas is that they all have big affectionate hearts. So when Pachita is left outside to sleep in the backyard, Izuku for the first time goes against his mother's wishes. After he's sure that she has fallen asleep, he sneaks out of his room to let the dog in. SSSHH. His hushed whisper warns the dog not to bark as he tries not to get caught. Izuku's heart hammers in his chest. He's never been a rebellious child. Not like Kaken. He'd never broken the rules. Whatever his mom says, he respectfully does. But poor Pachita. Izuku couldn't just leave him outside to sleep all alone. Izuku lets the dog up onto his bed. From the higher vantage point, Pachita gets a good view of all the superhero merchandise that adorns the walls. The number one hero, All Might, smiles from all possible angles. Don't judge me. Izuku squirms in embarrassment once he gets beneath his All Might themed blankets. After Pachita does that dog thing where he spins in a few circles first, he settles into the bed with Izuku. The boy smiles as he closes his eyes, happy to be sharing the bed with his new friend. He's excited to introduce Kaken to the dog the next day, hoping his childhood friend will be as impressed as he is by the animal's quirk. Eventually, the two drift asleep. Their slumber silent with very little snores. They would have not gotten caught if not for Inko being such a concerned mother. The protective mom pokes her head into the room to check on her son. She finds him nuzzled up against Pachita, the two of them sleeping with smiles. She sighs, not wanting to ruin the tender moment by waking them up. She figures she'll reprimand Izuku in the morning for going against the rules, but for now, she'll let the two bond. After all, this is only the start of the bond between a boy and his dog. Chapter 3. Scarlet sneakers scuff solid concrete, the shabby shoes planting themselves firmly on the grounds of UA beneath the outsoles, is a mess of pedal confetti, the after-party of the school's entrance exam, leaving a boy left in its wake. He lingers under the billowing cherry blossoms until a stronger breeze blows, the wind ruffling his green curls and knocking more of the sakura tree's corolla loose. Izuku Midoriya's viridescent gaze glimmers under the glow of a salmon sky as he's showered by the flower petals. Some of the fuchsia specks land on his t-shirt, their gentle descent coming to a sudden halt. It's one of the spare articles of clothing his mother made him pack in the flaxen knapsack that he has hoisted over his shoulder by a single strap. Izuku's grip on the band tightens when he recalls the reason for needing another set of attire in the first place. His transformation during the physical portion of the hero school's exam comes to mind, his quirk's ability having shredded through his first outfit. The moppy mess called hair that resides atop of the boy's head sways when he tries shaking the memory of his metamorphosis from his mind. It helps him to forget when his green gaze settles on the familiar vehicle that's slowly pulling up to the school's gates. A soft smile stretches his freckled cheeks and he begins walking towards the car. Smoke wafts from the Nissan Versa's exhaust pipe, the engine's thrumming reminding Izuku of a familiar sound and forcing his smile down. He places a hand over the left side of his chest, feeling the wire underneath his shirt. The back and forth of introspection versus assuagement resettles on the person in the vehicle once she steps out. Izuku Midoriya exits the car to greet her son at the school gate, worry written all over her expression. The green-eyed mother hurries over to her kid, wrapping him in a hug that puts the bear strength in Mama Bear. Izuku wheezes as he gasps for air, his lungs crushed so long as he's caught in her grasp. "My baby. They told me what happened. Are you okay?" She ironically frets over his well-being, despite being the cause of his current breathing problems. Once released from her embrace, Izuku finally manages to inhale enough oxygen so that he can speak. I'm fine, Mom. Recovery girl said that I'm fine." He stands up straight to show her that he's still completely intact, as though that's proof of his good health. She critically eyes him up and down, searching for any scars or scrapes. When Inko is seemingly satisfied with her own diagnosis, she nods. "If you say so." Though she remains wary about the final verdict. She steps aside so that Izuku can throw his bag in the car's trunk. As the green adventures around the grill to return to the driver's side, she sneaks a glance at the prestigious hero school that her son applied to. "You met Recovery Girl, huh? I wish it had been under better circumstances, but that must have been neat," and smiles while thinking how excited the hero Itaku must have been to meet one of his idols. Izuku climbs into the passenger side, relishing in how soft the cushion is once his body sinks into the seat. The door slamming shut jars his memory of the eventful day he had, so that he mimics her smile. "Yeah. And present Mick was the one who read us all the rules, and Cementus was our proctor for the written part." "That's great, Izuku, but..." Inko interrupts her son to literally point out his lack of a safety strap via gesturing with her index finger. When he looks down at his lap, she feigns clearing her throat before correcting him to look up by flicking forward, "Seatbelt." Izuku jostles himself to sit up straight, grabbing onto the strap's clip fastener so that he can pull it down. "Oh. Right." He begins to tug on the line to make it work. Once it reaches across his chest, he locks it in place with a click. "Sorry," he gives his mother an apologetic look before readjusting himself to get comfortable again. "So, you were telling me about your day." Inko locks her own seatbelt into place before turning her keys in the car's ignition slot to switch on the engine. She gives her son a quick glance to let him know that she's still listening as she shifts the vehicle into gear. Izuku practically jumps in his seat with excitement upon being reminded of his glimpse at UAO, yeah. He recalls how amazing the massive estate is with not just its main building's theater auditorium, but also the entire mock city the school created just for the physical exam. He continues with his recollection of the time spent there vehemently. "I met Recovery Girl last after I helped save a girl that was..." "The girl?" He doesn't expect his mother to slam roughly on the brakes. The car jolts to a stop before it even begins to move, safety strap tightening to hold him in place so that he doesn't go flying out the windshield. Izuku is suddenly very grateful that his mother told him to wear the seatbelt. Startled by the sudden halt of the vehicle, he glances at the car's driver with wide eyes. "Mom?" He verbally expresses his mixture of shock and confusion when he sees that she's sobbing. Sorry. Inko apologizes in a quavering voice while trying to wipe away her tears with the back of her hands. She sniffles as snot hangs from her nose, the crying becoming overwhelmingly hysterical. Izuku knows from experience that the waterworks are about to flood the car and drown him like a dam bursting. She can hardly get any words out, it's just. Inko watches through blurred vision as her son searches frantically in the glove compartment for a box of tissues. When Izuku finds nothing to dry her tears, his panic escalates and he fumbles with the door handle. Realizing that the child lock is in place, he has no choice but to resort to begging her not to turn the car into a death trap. "Oh no, Mom, don't. My little Zuzu is growing up." But her wailing is like an alarm ringing to warn everyone on a ship that the boat is sinking. There's nothing to plug the leak as water starts to fill up the car's interior. Inko's delirious weeping threatens both of their lives until he manages to roll down the window. At the last second, he saves them from a flooded enclosed space. "Moom." Izuku groans in exhausted exasperation. His fatigue turns him languid, his body sliding down the seat. He shakes his head with what little energy he has left to muster for the motion. "It's not like that. After I rescued her is when I passed out." Inko pauses her dramatic sniveling, sinuses suddenly cleared. She has some sort of backlash reaction before doing a double take. "Wait, this girl never thanked you?" One of her eyebrows raises scrupulously, and her tone changes tune. Izuku fidgets in place, his mother's hard gaze suddenly making him feel as though he's being watched closely under a microscope. He avoids her stare while trying to come up with an answer that'll keep both him and the girl that he saved off his mom's chopping block. "Well, you're telling me that you never even got her name?" Inko's obtrusive outburst startles Izuku just as much as when she slammed on the car's brakes. Seeing that his mother is on the verge of crying yet again, albeit for a different reason over her son's interaction with a girl this time, he's quick to shout over her too. "Mom, would you just let me finish what I'm saying?" He tries not to sound too desperate to get a sentence in, but his plea comes out as a whine anyways. The sudden cry surprises Inko just the right amount that it manages to snap her out of her delusional state of mind. You're right," she nods as she acknowledges how crazy she was acting. Inko shifts the car back into gear, mirroring her headspace returning to normal. As she starts to pull forward, she prompts her son to explain further. "Sorry Izuku. Continue." Izuku falters, partially because he hadn't expected her to actually let him talk, and slightly due to the next part of his story. He anxiously fiddles with the cord under his shirt. When he finally settles on the right word, "my quirk," he quells his nerves enough to say, "I only passed out because I exceeded my runtime with my chainsaws while using it." Inko stiffens in her seat. As soon as she does, she tries hiding the discomposure by pretending to slouch. "Oh. I see," she mulls over what her response will be very carefully. She knows that her son is watching her closely just as much as he's listening. Internally, the woman doesn't know whether to be relieved or not. She wasn't sure what she had thought when she heard her son had saved someone, but the usage of his quirk hadn't come to mind for whatever reason. Ultimately, her boy made a choice, and it's up to her to support him, should he choose to stand by it for the proper cause. "You made the right decision, Izuku. Never doubt that." She spares him a quick glance, so that he knows the matter is important enough for her to risk taking her eyes off the road for a moment. Izuku looks away, his gaze breaking contact from her and falling into his lap. "I just moved on my own." His fingers curl around the fabric of his shorts until he has handfuls of the material bunched up in his palms. Whatever he's feeling transfers over to the touch of his chest. He raises one arm, placing a hand over his sternum where a wire resides. "I didn't think. I just pulled on my cord." He feels a heartbeat as though it's still active. Inko pulls up to a red light, utilizing the opportunity as a chance to look over at her son and gauge his expression. If her motherly instinct weren't enough, she can see as clear as the day being lit by sunbeams with her eyes that he has a lot on his mind. "You know, Izuku, I understand that kids stop caring about their parents at a certain age. But it's still rude not to ask your mother about her day too." She thinks that the best course of action is to change the subject. Once Izuku registers the drastic change in conversational topic, he's none the wiser to her strategy, mistaking the switch up for a revival of his mother's moodiness. "Ah. Sorry, Mom." He stammers out an apology and awkwardly forces out a fake chuckle. "So, how was your day?" Inko rolls her eyes over her son's dramatics, not realizing that he takes after her. She knows better than to bore him with details about how she did laundry and cleaned the house all morning. So she decides now is as good a time as any to mention the supper situation. "Well, I didn't really have the chance to start cooking dinner since the school called around that time." She notes her son's surprised reaction from her peripheral vision. "Do you want to pick something up at the store?" Then makes a turn with the steering wheel to head downtown. Izuku blinks as he processes the information coupled with her question. It takes him a moment for his brain to catch up with his words when he has a great epiphany of a solution. Oh. Can I get one of those pre-made catsuddins? Inko casts her son a withering look through the reflection of the rearview mirror. You know those aren't healthy, though her tutting tone doesn't quite match her expression in the sense of sounding serious. Izuku takes it seriously anyways, come on, please. Serious enough that he puts his hands together in a begging gesture to go along with his whining. Inko has a difficult time stifling her laugh over how ridiculous he's being. Fine. She gives in to the pleading puppy eyes that haven't changed since he was a baby. But just because this is a special occasion, his victorious smile is contagious, and she thinks his spirits have been lifted high enough to venture back on topic to UA. How well do you think you did on the exam? But she reconsiders that thought when she hears him hesitate. She worries for the worst until he says, I'm not so sure. He scratches the back of his head, as though he'll find the answer buried in his thick curls of hair. I guess we'll find out. She shoots him a sidelong stare, seeing that he's taken to watching other cars whiz by outside the window. I mean, you have to have some idea of how you did. She tests her luck by attempting to pry a little more, in case he's trying to hold out on her for some reason. Good, I guess, but his demeanor continues to droop the more that she persists, probably the same as anyone else. He shrugs noncommittally before reaching over to turn up the volume dial on the system head unit. Can we turn on the radio? Present Mix podcast is starting soon. Inko opens her mouth to say something more, but closes it just as quickly. Her son has already raised the audio too loud for them to continue talking. So, she relents and whispers more so to herself, yeah. Okay. Sure. Like the continuous spin of the car's tires, Inko's mind does loops as it tries to figure out why her child has become so despondent. The gentle rise and fall of the road beneath the vehicle does little to soothe her as she overthinks. Part of her hopes that Present Mick will mention UA's entrance exam, but the other side of her knows that she needs the radio as a distraction, just as much as Izuku does. The Heroes podcast usually consists of jokes that are good for easing any sort of tension. With how increasingly frustrated she's becoming due to so many people cutting into her lane without turn signals, Inko figures she could use a wisecracker too. Yesterday, I caught the sinister villain Bomber Bear and couldn't help thinking to myself. Present Mick's voice transmits through the radio and already captivates Izuku's interest at the mention of hero work. Inko can't help but listen closely as well, intrigue getting the better of her, past experience from tuning into the podcasts, leaving her in anticipation of a punchline. What do you call a bear without ears? B. The joke's landing is a bit rough at first, but both Midoriyas wind up howling with laughter once they comprehend the humor behind it. Inko is grateful for the dumb gag, her stress already alleviated. Suddenly, exams and quirks seem like less of a hassle than they originally were. If her son who's on the direct receiving end has already forgotten about those issues, then she can't too, for his sake if not her own. Inko instead focuses on her first and foremost priority, which is being a mother, and that means feeding her boy. The woman turns into the parking lot of a grocer with the idea that they can quickly run in. It's hard for her to find a space at this hour, so she pulls alongside the front entrance. I'll be right behind you if somebody pulls out of a spot, but wait right here if you finish first. Inko reaches over the headrest of her chair to grab the purple purse she keeps in the backseat. There's just enough yen in her pocketbook to afford a frozen meal. Go to self-checkout and only buy your katsudon. No candy or treats, young man. The boy's mother withholds the money from his reach until she finishes giving him instructions. Once he stops rolling his eyes and nods in agreement with her laying of ground rules, only then does she allow him to have it. What about you? He pauses halfway out the door to look back when he realizes his mom didn't request anything for herself. The yen that the boy is holding suddenly feels light in his very heavy hand. Inko closes her eyes with her smile, concealing the chagrin of not being able to afford something for herself. I'll just have leftovers, sweetie. She then tries shooing him out of the car before he can see through the facade. Now hurry along. Izuku turns his face away, hiding his rueful expression from her as he gets out of the vehicle. He's seen the overdue bills piled up on the kitchen counter to know his father's checks haven't been covering their finances anymore. He's well aware of her monetary problems. Though, his mother doesn't know that. He knows better than to say anything to her should he spare her the shame. And yet, he still feels guilty as he goes to spend her hard-earned yen for himself. As Izuku's threadbare sneakers slap the store's tiled floor, he begins weighing his options with the money in his hand. The boy figures there may be some yen left over if he buys the cheaper stuff. Grocers sometimes keep expiring meals at the back of the shopee with marked down prices. Each aisle he passes has something different. There's fruit, veggies, bread, canned goods, and finally at the end is when he reaches the discounted stock. Shelves with different microwavable meals give him his own variety of food to select from. Izuku lucks out and breathes a sigh of relief when he finds a box of katsudon. Except, when the boy reaches for it, someone's hand brushes up against his own. He realizes when he sees nails painted in a coat of purple polish that it's a soft, yet firm, feminine hand. Retracting his own hand like the girl's fingers were the fangs of a serpent that tried to bite him, Izuku yelps in disconcertment. He feels his face heating up in embarrassment, turning as bright red as his shoes by now. The boy's mild case of gynophobia really takes hold when he sees the rest of the girl. The hand that touched his own is connected to a fair-skinned teenager that must share his age. She's so petite that it's cute, her violet hair short the same as her height, and he can't help but be captivated by her triangular eye shape. What really amazes him about the girl is how cables hang from her lobes like earrings. He places his hand over his chest, feeling his own cord extension from his body and sensing a kindred spirit in that odd sense. He also feels the rapid rhythm of his heart, trying not to explode from pumping so much blood all at once. As for how the girl responds to the accidental contact, her initial instinct is to apologize for startling him so badly. However, she too feels an extreme amount of shock when she sees how the boy looks. She recognizes him from the entrance exam and blurts out, "Chainsaw Boy," before she can stop herself. The hand that touched said "Chainsaw Boys" flies over her mouth to stifle the words that already came out. A blush of her own, though not as extreme as Izuku's, fades in as a pink hue to shadow her cheeks. Izuku sobers up when he hears the way that she referred to him. Wait. He does a double take before making sure he heard her correctly. "What did you call me?" And that reaction from him only embarrasses the girl even more, her blush darkening. Hesitantly, a muffled whisper comes from behind her hand, "Chainsaw Boy." After a moment of blinking at one another, both failing to gauge the other, the girl bows and shouts, "I'm sorry." Izuku jumps in place, startled by her a second time. She winces before toning her voice down, "That's not your name," and remains tentative about what she says, ... Is it? Izuku stands there staring at her dumbfounded like a fool, blinking a few more times for extra measure to make sure the girl is real and that this is actually happening. When he realizes that the gradually growing silence between them is becoming awkward, he shakes his head to both answer her question and jumpstart his mouth. "No, it's not." A weak laugh slips out on its own before he introduces himself with a small bow, "I'm Izuku Midoriya." "I'm Kyoka Jiro," the girl returns the gesture as she laughs along. Now that the strange tension between them has subsided, she loosens up a little. "Sorry again, for the whole Chainsaw Boy thing. And startling you." Kyoka twirls one of her ear jacks so that it wraps around her finger the same way one would normally play with their hair. No, it's fine." Izuku fans away her apology with each of his frantically flapping hands. But still lingers on the matter to an extent, rubbing the nape of his neck nervously while wondering aloud, "Just. How do you know about?" Kyoka raises an eyebrow when he doesn't finish his sentence. "The chainsaws." She tries concluding it for him when she realizes that he doesn't plan on saying the rest. He sheepishly nods in response. "Dude, we were at the same test site during the UA entrance exam. It was literally today. You didn't notice me?" Her hands go on her noticeably curvaceous hips, and Izuku can't help but follow the motion with his eyes. "I don't know how I could have missed you." His mouth moves on its own to convey his thoughts. He realizes after the matter of speaking that he's being lewd and diverts his gaze to the ceiling in an attempt to cover his tracks. The tomato-faced blush returns full swing. Fortunately for him, Kyoka misinterprets his response as a regular reply. "Well, you were pretty occupied with taking down the zero-pointer and saving that other girl." She recalls his shirtless rescue and blushes while thinking of her own semi-lewd thoughts. "Ah, anybody would have done the same in my position." Izuku tries brushing away her praise with one hand while bashfully running the other hand through his bushy green mess of hair. "Are you kidding?" Kyoka looks at him incredulously. "Everyone else ran off like a bunch of pansies." She shocks Izuku with her terminology and zeal. "You were the only one rockin' enough to actually be a hero like we're trying to become." He worries that he'll faint in front of her again due to how much blood keeps rushing up to his face. "Oh. Thanks, I guess." Izuku tries staring down at the floor to avoid facing the influx of emotions that he's feeling. He's not used to such praise, and from a girl no less. Heck, he's surprised that he's even lasted this long talking to one in general. "By the way, are you doing alright?" Kyoka's question snaps him out of his musings and causes him to look back up at her with confusion. Huh? He tries not to scrunch up his face too much as he tries to figure out what she means. He does a poor job. Seeing the boy's bewilderment, Kyoka elaborates a little. I was also in recovery girl's office afterwards, and you didn't wake up the entire time that I was there. Oh? That. Izuku's eyes almost pop out of his head from how large his epiphany is. I'm fine. Just some quirk overuse backlash. He gestures towards his face with his hands, as if she hadn't noticed the lack of bloody oil-soaked chainsaws until now. Then he thinks about what else she said and asks, wait, what were you in there for? Kyoka wavers, suddenly self-conscious about herself the same way that he had been. Oh, I have pretty sensitive ears, so. She shyly twists and untwists the jacks hanging from her lobes before explaining, you kinda did a number on my hearing when you went all chainsaw massacre on the 0-pointer. Izuku feels like he's been struck across the face. Or maybe stabbed in the chest. Both. He feels both. He holds his hands out in front of himself, unsure of what to do with them. Realizing that he's just standing there and hasn't apologized, he bends down to his waist to bow. Oh no, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay. I'm fine now too. Really, it's alright. But Kyoka interrupts him with a mimicry of Izuku's earlier frantic double hand wave. Just keep that in mind the next time you decide to transform. She winces at the memory of the sound, but tries to assure him with a delicate smile that it's okay anyways. Izuku looks up at her, confused yet again. Next time. Do you not think you did well enough on the exam to get in? Kyoka tilts her head to the side in mutual miscommunication. She then tilts her head upwards as she thinks, I'm pretty sure I, at least, racked up about 30 of the 3-pointers. Realizing Kyoka is talking about the score required to get accepted into the hero school, Izuku's shoulders slump with sorrow. He hadn't told his mom why guessing the exam results was such a touchy topic for him during their drive to the store, but he supposes it doesn't hurt to discuss the matter with a fellow examinee. I didn't, transform ... until the end. He unconsciously places a hand over the string that dangles from his sternum under his shirt. Both of Kyoka's brows raise in a mixture of surprise and confusion. Dude, really? Why not? She finds herself taking a step back in an attempt to better assess the boy's downtrodden demeanor. Izuku looks away, avoiding eye contact. His fingers trace the cord under the fabric of his shirt as he tries thinking of a good response for her. After a moment, he gives her a half-hearted shrug and mumbles, I dunno. Seeing how uncomfortable he is, Kyoka decides not to pry any further. Well, that's a bummer. She crosses her arms and tries cheering him up instead. I think you would have made a pretty hardcore hero. Thanks. Izuku cracks a small smile after hearing her say that. The hand hovering over his chest falls away, hanging in front of him next. Most people don't say that about my quirk. His fingers curl in to cover his open palm and form a fist before he looks up from it to return her sentiment, but you seem pretty rockin' too. Flabbergasted by the boy using her own terminology on her, Kyoka turns as stiff as a board painted red. Rockin' shutted. Her ear jacks start twisting around each other, and the flush-faced girl has to struggle not to let them get tangled. Sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Izuku begins to match her state of panic minus her quirk's ear extensions intertwining. The blushing and stammering mess of a boy hides his face behind his hands. Seeing that he's just as embarrassed, Kyoka spares him from getting jabbed by the jacks. She finally manages to straighten out. Whatever, she tries to play the moment off by holding out her cell phone for him to take. Here. Surprised to see the gesture, Izuku spreads his hands just enough to peek out and look at the foreign object. The case is bedazzled with musical notes and has a glittery effect. Huh? He looks up from it to her with a perplexed stare. Kyoka shakes the hand holding the phone to urge him on. Your phone number. Put it in so we can keep chatting, but avoids meeting his gaze out of lingering embarrassment. Oh. Izuku realizes what she intended then and takes the phone from her to put in his contact. While he's at it, he inputs her phone number into his cell as well. While he's busy looking at the phone screens, Kyoka chances a glance in his direction to take in his appearance. Now that the boy isn't covered in blood and has his complexion back, he's even handsomer than he was before. He also has a cool sense of style. Kyoka stifles a giggle when she reads the small fonted kanji text that simply reads t-shirt. It really is just an otherwise normal white short-sleeved top that he's got on. Nice shirt, she compliments him with a nod. Thanks, Izuku hands the girl her phone back as he returns the nod. I like yours too. Forgetting which outfit she picked out for that day, Kyoka looks down at herself to see how she dressed. The top she chose is a purple T with bolded English text that says deep dope in yellow, but the catch is that the P on the end extends into an arrow that points down to her crotch. A blush so radical that it covers her entire face overwhelms her. Perv. And she snatches the box of Katsudon off the shelf between them before hurrying away. Just as she's about to round the corner, she pauses to shout over her shoulder, "You'd better text me." And poor Izuku is left discombobulated by the girl's sudden reaction. Not only did he receive mixed signals, but he had his dinner stolen from him. He stretches out an arm as though he's reaching for the girl and his food. Wait. What? But ultimately surrenders to common sense, being that there is no sense to what just happened. Suddenly, an eerie aura starts to creep up behind the boy. Who was that nice, sweet, kind, gorgeous girl, Izuku? His mother materializes seemingly out of thin air behind him to be the world's biggest jump scare. Izuku screams. "Mom, how long have you been standing there?" He feels faint after a violent vertigo assault on his mind from how she just magically appeared. "Long enough," Inko smirks as she folds her arms over one another. "Now tell me how long until I get my grandchildren, Zuku. When do I get to meet her parents?" The atmosphere becomes heavier as she somehow increases her aura's output. The overwhelming motherly force nearly crushes Izuku from how strong the amount of pressure is. The poor boy almost falls to his knees, legs wobbling as he struggles to remain standing in retaliation of the weight against him. "She's just a friend." He cries out in a desperate Hail Mary attempt to stop his mom from smothering him in her emanating aura. Fortunately for him, the effort works and the dense fog lifts. He's able to breathe again, heavy intakes of air, as he bends forward with his hands on his knees. "My little Zuzu is just friends with a Jiro." Inko squeals with delight as she does a celebratory dance that has her wiggling in place. She's completely oblivious to her son's suffering as she commemorates the milestone in his life. Once Izuku has finally recovered enough oxygen to speak again, he forces himself to stand up straight and tries to stop her from embarrassing him any further. "Muam." But there's a small smile that graces his lips despite his protests to her happiness. He too feels like celebrating, even if he'd never admit it. After all, Kyoka Jiro is his first friend since he lost Pichita. Chapter 4. Vivid vermilion permeates a hoary handkerchief, blood seeping through the chalky cotton. The brazenly palpable blemish spreads over the cloth with effervescence. When she hacks up more of the bright liquid, a spray of red specks the fabric, further staining the white material as it sinks in. Inko holds the mouchoir close to her mouth in order to hide the glaring results of her dry cough. Her hand carries a slight tremor as she tries to force down her raspy croaks of breath. "Mommy?" She hears her son's muffled voice traveling through the bathroom door. Further attempting to hide her ill condition, she turns the knob on the sink faucet so that the sound of water running into the drain will drown her coughing fit out. "Just a second more, Izuku, okay sweetie?" She spits into the already sullied handkerchief before folding it over and disposing of it by flushing it down the toilet. Her saliva comes out as a sandy Titian color, blood pooling with sputum as she splashes the cold faucet water on her lips. She swallows some of the liquid and gargles it in her mouth before spitting out a darker shade of claret, turning water into wine. Inko looks in the mirror, seeing how pale her face has become. She forces a smile that'll be enough to fool her child at the very least, before shutting off the sink and gathering the courage to face him. He's waiting on the other side of the door when she opens it, his pet dog clutched close to his chest in each of his arms. The cheetah had earned a verdant green collar with a silver name tag dangling from it since his adoption, becoming an official member of the Midoriya family's household. The canine gazes up at her with eyes that seem to know of her illness. She hardens her stare as though she's silently telling the dog to keep quiet about it to Izuku. Inko crouches down a bit to match her son's height, broadening her phony smile. "Yes. What is it, sweetheart?" Her benign tone isn't the least bit fraudulent as she tries to sound as considerate as possible for her kid though. Izuku holds Pichita a little tighter, nuzzling his chin into the animal's fur as he looks down to avoid her line of sight. Are you okay?" he tentatively asks. Inko's smile wavers, but she doesn't let it fall. "Of course I am. What would make you ask that?" She springs up like she has energy to spare while putting her hands on her hips with authority. She sometimes forgets how perceptive her son can be, especially ever since he'd picked up quirk analysis as a hobby. The crafty mother quickly brainstorms an excuse for the hacking sounds he must have heard, it's just seasonal allergies is all, and sells the lie with a feigned sniffle, before wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Oh, alright," Izuku accepts the fib without a second thought. Her son is so innocent that she feels guilty for deceiving him when he trusts her so much. He perks up, forgetting about his concerns for her health, and asks with an eager lean forward, "Did you call Kaken yet?" Inko nods, happy to tell him the truth. "You bet. Your Aunt Mitsuki said you can go over there while mommy goes out." She brushes past the boy so that she can grab her purse off her dresser. "Yes. Hear that, Pichita." Izuku celebrating in the background as she prepares herself for an outing, turns her smile a bit more genuine. However, wait a minute, but where are you going? Her face falls flat when she realizes that she'll have to lie to her son again. Truthfully, she made a doctor's appointment. But she can't let Izuku know that, he'd be worried until he's sick himself. "Oh, mommy just has a few errands to run, nothing for you to fret about." She ties her long flow of hair up into a bun as she walks back into the bathroom to use the mirror. Again, Izuku believes her without a hint of doubt. "Okay then." He sets Pichita down before asking, "Does that mean I can be a big boy and make my own breakfast?" Inko side-eyes him, wondering where that one came from. As he's been getting older, he's oddly been requesting to do more and more for her around the house, such as laundry or dishes. It's a relief on her part to catch a break thanks to some help, but she can't help but be suspicious. No using the stove, she also can't resist her motherly concerns about the dangers or messes that he could make. "I won't." Izuku feverishly shakes his head so hard that his entire body moves side to side with emotion. Sitting beside him, Pichita matches the movement, oscillating his own tiny head. Against Inko's better judgment, she decides to give it a try. Fine, she accedes to the cute proposal based on the agreed to terms and conditions, then you can make yourself something to eat. Yeah. Izuku cheers with a happy hop. Pichita bounces with him as though he were a rabbit instead of a dog, yapping in equal elation. Inko shakes her head, humored by the pair. "Don't get yourself into any trouble and don't cause Mitsuki any problems either." She gives her son a semi-stern look so that he takes her seriously. He's a good kid, probably one of the best behaved in all of Japan, but children can still be mischievous little scamps from time to time that she has to make sure she keeps him disciplined. "I'll be good. Promise." He bends with a downward drop of his jump to fall into a full at the waist bow. It's hard to take him seriously at his age with a short stature and all-might pajamas, but Inko hums with satisfaction knowing her son keeps his word. "Then I'll be off." She grabs her coat and begins sliding her arms into the sleeves as she heads for the door. Izuku and Pichita trail behind, the small duo almost in sync with one another. As Inko grabs an umbrella just in case the weather changes, she casts them one last look over her shoulder. "Be back soon." "Bye." Izuku waves as he bids her farewell out the door. Once it shuts and he's got the house to himself, the boy shares a look with his canine companion. His eyes peel upwards with an inclined curl of his lips, equal parts thinned as impish arches. He's pleased with himself and can't help but have such a smug expression. "Hey, Pichita, looks like it's a slice of bread for breakfast." The puckish pull of his mouth into such a thinly stretched smile remains as he shares his plan with his pet pal. The dog cocks his head to the side, befuddled by the boy's pathetic revelation. It's not until Izuku gets his grubby little mitts into the kitchen that Pichita sees why the bread breakfast is such a big deal. It's not just any slice from a loaf. It's the ultimate piece of toast. The boy's mother would never allow such an unhealthy, disgusting meal to be consumed by her child. Izuku slathers the bread slice with everything his mom kept stocked in the fridge and cabinets. Strawberry jam, marmalade, honey, butter, grape jelly, cream cheese, peanut butter, and cinnamon are blended together in a thick spread of sugar. Pichita's mouth hangs open as he watches Izuku actually take a bite from the appalling and repulsive childish concoction. Droplets dribble down from the boy's chin, spilling across the kitchen counter that he's leaning over as he eats and joins all of the crumbs that broke off from the bite. Izuku moans in satisfaction, munching on the toast and savoring the explosion of flavor. When he sees Pichita watching him, he mistakes the awestruck stare and holds out the breakfast blend as an offering. "You want some too, boy?" Pichita simply turns around on the heels of his paws and goes over to the doggy dish filled with kibble, making a firm statement without saying anything at all. Izuku shrugs, unfazed as he chomps down on the toast again anyways. "Suit yourself." The adolescent drops a few more morsels of grain as he travels from the kitchen to the home office. Whatever other residue that spills onto the carpet along the way goes unnoticed by the boy. Izuku's thoughts are too fixated on the computer that he slowly starts up, a one-track mind eager to begin the day properly. Almost ritual at this point, he types into the internet search engine the name of his favorite video. The title autofills and the page loads much to the boy's anticipation. All Might's boisterous guffaw is a resounding boom through the PC's speaker system, shaking the whole house as though the hero is actually present. The clip shows the symbol of peace making his public debut. A Herculean hero catches a crashed city transit bus that's about to fall off a bridge and pulls its passengers from the wreckage. The amazing rescue never fails to inspire awe from Izuku. Vegeta has to squint from how bright the boy's beaming smile is. Two distinct tufts of blonde hair atop the man's head match the peace sign All Might flashes towards the camera. Izuku recites what the hero says verbatim, "It's alright now. I am here." Vegeta leans back, stunned by how spastic the otaku has become. The boy rocks back and forth so fast and hard that the extreme motion would cause whiplash, if not for how young he is. In the kid's eyes, the reflection of the screen is a pish-posh of color that acknowledges All Might's Western-themed outfit. When Izuku breaks contact with the monitor, Vegeta is shocked to see tears threatening to spill over. The dog's owner raises and points a shaky finger towards the frozen frame of All Might. "Hey Vegeta. Do you think I could one day be like him?" His voice wobbles just as much as he retracts that same hand to dry his eyes. "That's my dream. To become a hero." Vegeta leans his head to the side as he studies the crying child. A sympathetic stare from the dog has the boy bending down to pick the mud up. At arm's width and at equal height as Izuku holds the canine up, the two maintain that contact. The gaze lingers, each of them simply relishing in the company of the other. The boy sniffles as his sorrow dissipates, and his downturned mouth lifts into a smile. Izuku can't help but pull the dog in for a hug, holding the animal close in his arms and pressed against his chest. Vegeta nuzzles into the warmth, closing his eyes with content as he listens to the boy's soothing heartbeat. The gentle embrace brings a feeling of shared solace. Izuku's dog nestles against him as he says, "I wonder what your dream is, Vegeta." They snuggle some more from that position before moving their cuddles to the desk chair. Izuku restarts the recording of All Might's debut, watching it again. Instead of cringing, Vegeta watches along with him this time. They stay seated there together for what's practically a feature film's runtime as the video loops. All the while, Izuku pets Vegeta as the dog burrows into his lap. The companionship brings a smile to each of their faces as they relish in the moment. Eventually, Izuku carries his pet over to the Bakugos. With Aunt Mitsuki and Kakin expecting him, he doesn't want to keep them waiting too long. Vegeta squirms a little in his grip as he carries the dog up the steps to his childhood friend's house. "Knock it off," he whispers in an attempt to mellow the animal's mood. Except, when he rings the doorbell, Vegeta only struggles even more. "Fine," Izuku groans as he crouches to let the dog slip his grip, "I'll put you down." The door creaks open to reveal a pointy-haired blonde the same age as Izuku. He glowers at his childhood friend before redirecting the glare towards Vegeta. The boy's lips curl into a snarl as he asks, "What the fuck is that freak of nature doing here, Deku?" Izuku flinches as though he's been struck across the cheek by the verbal jab. Vegeta glances upwards at his owner, noting his keeper's downtrodden demeanor. It's not the first time that Kakin rearranged the kanji in Izuku's name to make it mean useless, but it still takes the boy by surprise. Izuku shakes it off with the rest of his body's trembling as he tries to respond with an as wobbly voice. Aunt Mitsuki said, "I could see come over, so I thought. But my mom didn't say you could bring that damned misfit mud of yours with you." The sudden shout interrupts Izuku and nearly causes him to trip as he shrinks back from the sharp spike of tone. Izuku's shoe scrapes the brim of the stair step that he's backed against, the end of his sneaker leaning over the ledge. "Did she?" Kakin's second shout pushes Izuku the rest of the way so that he takes a step down. The blonde boy looks down on his green-haired neighbor from the higher ground. Izuku meets the eyes of his childhood friend, green melted down by the burning red glare. Izuku looks down, averting his gaze out of instinctive fear. He stammers as he tries to sound unaffected and "No. I just thought. Figures a loser like you would get a pet just as shitty," but the insults keep pushing him down. Literally, Izuku is forced back another step on the staircase. Kakin sneers as he shakes his head with contempt. "No wonder you don't have any fucking friends." Izuku clenches the part of his chest that covers his heart, hand grabbing a fistful of his All Might themed shirt. Kakin. "I thought we were friends." His eyes shudder in shock as he tries not to cry from how deep the boy's words cut into his feelings. "We're fucking not." The Ashen blonde snaps viciously. Vegeta winces back with Izuku before looking between each of the boys, deeply disturbed. The dog had been made acquainted with Kakin before that. He knows there's a short fuse to the kid's temper, but this is a whole new level from their meeting. "When are you gonna get it through your thick stupid skull that I only let you come over because of our moms?" The pointy-haired blonde lets off a few sparks from the palms of his hands via the usage of his quirk, and don't call me Kaken. But Izuku whimpers in response to the display of power as an intimidation tactic. A quirkless kid fares no chance against someone with such a strong ability like Kaken's explosive quirk. As such, Pichita defends his owner, growling as a warning to match the brash blonde's threat. "Boy, you got a fucking problem." Kaken pivots to face Pichita and growls in return. More miniature detonations come from the boy's palms as he stomps towards the tiny animal. "Looks like your dumb dog is trying to protect you, shitty Deku." A vein bulges from the blonde's forehead when Pichita doesn't back down from the bully. Izuku's mouth drops agape as he looks between his pet and his childhood friend challenging one another. The boy forces himself to form words from his parted lips. Pichita, don't. Worried about them getting hurt. The small dog obeys, looking away from the blonde to his owner with uncertainty. The blonde bully, however, doesn't back down. Izuku sees his childhood friend winding up for a kick and shouts, "Kaken, no." The punt nails Izuku in the side as he dives in the way, scooping Pichita into his arms and taking the brunt of the damage. The boy falls down the rest of the stairs, landing hard on his back. "Oi, you damned nerd." Kaken's eyes widen in shock as he's stunned momentarily by the sacrificial move. He stomps down the stairs to check on Izuku's well-being, while casting a glance over his shoulder to make sure nobody saw the accident. "That kick wasn't meant for you, it was meant for your dumb dog." When he reaches the bottom of the steps and he realizes there are no witnesses, though, the blonde's frown morphs into a horribly wicked grin. "But this one," he swings his leg right into the downed boy's back, "that one's just for you, damn Deku." Izuku grunts when more pain gets added to his already bruising body. He folds himself inwards, preserving Pichita's safety even more as he takes the next few hits as well. "Kaken, please stop." Izuku's desperate whine only urges the bully to continue his assault. "I told you to stop calling me that." The blonde stomps on the other boy. He keeps his foot in place, grinding his shoe back and forth to really drive in the pain. "We're not friends." A swift kick pounds against the defensive arm barrier Izuku put up between himself and Pichita. "The only friend that you've got is that dumb dog of yours." Seeing that the simple beating is getting him nowhere, the bully pops a few bursts of flame from his hands, with the intent to use his quirk. Before Izuku can receive burns to add to his misery though, his luck bails him out. The blonde boy's mother bellows from the house, "What are you yelling about, you brat?" Vitsuki's son stops short, startled by the interruptive shout. He checks around him, hoping that she isn't around the corner and that there isn't anyone else watching. When he sees that there are no witnesses to his bullying, he yells back at her, "Nothing, you old hag." Izuku peeks through half-lidded eyes when he hears his aunt Mitsuki ask, "Who's at the door?" What he sees instead of the woman is her son's menacing scowl that tells him without words not to let her know he's there. "Nobody." The young Bakugo barks back. Then, at a lower decibel that only Izuku can hear, he says it again, "Nobody." Izuku feels spat on as the blonde turns on his heel and heads up the staircase to leave him behind at the bottom. Only after his childhood friend is gone with a slam of the door does Izuku dare to uncurl from his balled-up protective form. Despite being the one covered in bruises and speaking through a busted lip, "Pichita. Are you alright?" The boy's concern is for his completely unharmed dog. Pichita mewls as he licks the blood oozing from Izuku's mouth in response. Man's best friend is the boy's only friend, as the dog also licks the rest of his owner's wounds. Chapter 5. No matter the amount of pressure that she applies, the handkerchief soaks itself red, an all too familiar incarnadine, and rank liquid gushing through the fabric to get between her fingers so that it may ooze under her hand. Inko hacks into the cloth that she's using to cover her mouth, fighting back a gag reflex as the white material shades red. The violent cough momentarily puts her mind in a fog that she nearly forgets she's driving. She eases on the brake so that the car will come to a slow and steady stop. Another slew of blood spills out of her mouth and onto the mouchoir. The woman feels lightheaded as she rests the top of her skull against the steering wheel. Inko almost closes her eyes to rest, but her lids snap open and she jumps to sit up straight when she hears her son ask from the passenger seat, "Allergies again, Mom?" The boy's mother hurriedly bunches up the napkin to hide her illness before flashing him a fake smile, remembering that she's not alone in the vehicle. She sees the grounds of UA behind him through the window, also recalling that she's dropping him off for his first day of hero school. She feigns wiping her nose, sniffling for added effect. It must be all those cherry blossoms. The same lie has somehow kept her disease hidden from her son all this time, and she has yet to reveal the truth to him. To maintain the illusion, Inko changes the subject with a dismissive wave of herself. But don't you worry about me, you need to focus on your big day. Izuku cocks his head to the side, staring at her closely, almost with a hint of confusion. Inko shudders when his hand places itself over hers. For a moment, she thinks that he's finally figured her out and seen through the healthy facade. But the tender touch and moving expression is just that of an ordinary concern as he says, "I'll always worry about you, Mom." Inko stares at her son, stupefied. She nearly chokes on a wet sob as she tries not to become emotional. Silly boy, her head shakes to detour the tears that threaten to spill over, but she ultimately has to wipe them away with her hand. You're the one throwing themself in danger to be a hero before she can reach over and give her boy a hug. The school bell rings to indicate classes are beginning. Oh, you should get going, you don't want to be late. Inko realizes she has to cut their farewell short and urges him to go with a gesture. Right. Bye, Mom. Izuku pushes open the passenger door and climbs out. He carries his bento box in one hand and hoists his backpack over his shoulder with the other before looking back. See you later. Inko waves and smiles one last time. Then, the door gets shut. It closes the space between her and her son. Bye, Izuku. The ill mother no longer suppresses her coughs as she watches her grown child head into the school building. Once inside, Izuku quickens his pace as he searches the long corridors. 1A, 1A. His classroom and number had been included on the acceptance letter he was sent in the mail, but he can't find it. He passes a door labeled 1B right before turning a corner and bumping into someone. Oop. Sorry. When Izuku takes a staggering step backwards, he sees an emaciated man in oversized clothes. Despite the skeletal figure's sickly appearance, the stranger chuckles heartedly and assures the boy, "It's quite alright, young man." Two wilted tufts of blonde hair hang over the guy's gaunt face as he tries waving away Izuku's concerns. "It's my fault for not watching where I was going." But Izuku waves his hands faster while frantically bowing apologetically anyways. No. I insist. It's my fault." Concern is written all over the boy's face as he stares up at the haggard-looking man. "Hey, are you okay?" He worriedly looks behind him and leans to check beyond the hall. "Perfectly fine," the gangly blonde continues gesturing with his hands to assure Izuku before returning the boy's concerned expression. "Are you okay? You look lost." Izuku bristles a bit at the reminder of his tardiness. He bashfully scratches the top of his head while glancing over his shoulder once more. Oh, yeah. You wouldn't happen to know where class 1 is?" The blonde smile looks oddly familiar to Izuku. You're on the right path, but he's much too locked into the details of finding his class to think deep about it. Just keep heading the way that you're going, and you'll find it at the center of the hall. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Izuku returns the man's smile and bows a few more times to express his gratitude before jogging down the corridor. The blonde watches the boy go before continuing on his own way in the opposite direction. Izuku not too long afterwards finds the entrance to his classroom, just as the man had said he would. The door is slightly slid open, left ajar, so that the boy can hear the grumbled complaints from someone inside. "You're a rowdy bunch, aren't you? It took you all 8 minutes to quiet down." Izuku pushes the door the rest of the way so that he can enter. And he finds himself accidentally interrupting what must be his teacher. An unkempt man with a slender stature and stubble unshaven across his frowning face stands behind the front desk, turning his gaze to the room's newcomer. Sorry that I'm late," Izuku nervously waves when he sees his classmates have also all collectively taken to staring at him. The teacher closes his half-lidded eyes the rest of the way as he sighs. "You'll fit right into this class, I can tell." The man half-heartedly gestures with one of his lanky arms towards the desks. "Grab a seat," motivating Izuku to hurriedly go for the remaining one at the back of the room. Izuku has to force back a gasp when he sees Kyoka across from him. "I shouldn't be expecting any other last-minute students, should I?" And the teacher takes that as a sign of some sort to not let him off the hook just yet. "And no, sir." Izuku shrinks in on himself as he tries to hide his embarrassment. A few snickers break out from some of the other students. Good, the pedagogue shifts his focus off of Izuku to address everyone all at once, because I'm only going to say this once. Everyone quiets down and listens intently to the man as he says, "This is the hero course. Not a playground. You should act like adults and not children." While in this class, the teacher pauses to let the strict doctrine settle in. He then turns to face the chalkboard behind him and writes his name in big kanji. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Izawa. I'd say pleasure to meet you, but you have yet to prove yourselves hero material to me." The class is taken aback by the statement, but further surprised when Izawa pulls out a set of UA's exercise uniforms. Change into your gym clothes and head out to the grounds if you want to change that. And do so quickly. Time is a valuable resource. What about the entrance ceremony or guidance lessons? Another girl that Izuku recognizes in his class raises her hand to object. She's the girl with a brunette bob that he saved from being crushed by the 0-pointer. There's no use wasting time on that stuff if I deem you can't cut it in the hero course, Azawa carelessly dismisses her before pointing an authoritative finger towards the door. Now, hurry along and get changed before I don't even bother giving you the chance to prove yourselves for making me impatient. His tone tightens just enough that the class gets going almost immediately after he gives the order. No running in the halls. A tall boy with blue hair and rectangular bifocals chops his arms as he tries to stop them all from trampling over one another. While a blonde boy with a tail anxiously tries to weave his way through the crowded doorway. Who knew this place was so competitive? Izuku lingers back with a few students that silently agreed it'd be smarter to wait for the traffic to mellow out first. One of which is the purple-haired girl he became friends with beforehand. Kyoka casually waves as she joins him at his side. Yo, Midoriya. Jiro. Hey. Izuku exclaims with a mixture of relief and nerves. He's happy to see a familiar friendly face, but her close proximity makes him fidget more than usual. Kyoka smirks, happy to tease the boy that she's befriended. First day tardiness, huh? Not exactly the best impression to make, she feigns some sass with one hand rested on her hip. I didn't exactly plan on it. Izuku wrings his hands together while looking down at the floor in shame. Even now, he can still feel some stares lingering on him. When he looks up, he sees his teacher's hard glare and half expects the man's eyes to glow red. Seeing that he's taking her jesting to heart, Kyoka eases up on him. Nobody tries to be late, you just are. She gives him a light punch on the arm to let him know it's just a joke, but forget that. And then raises her earjacks as a threatening display to shift his worries to her. I wanna know why you didn't tell me that you made it in, or that we'd be in the same class. Izuku's eyes expand as wide as his mouth opens when he realizes that he's in danger. The boy may not have much experience with girls, but he knows enough from his mother to understand he made a mistake. I'm sorry. He tries to calm her down with a panicked apology. But Kyoka shows zero mercy, jabbing him in the side of his neck to deliver a small shock. Not too far from the two, a boy with a lightning bolt in his blonde hair watches in envy. A shorter boy with purple balls atop his head shares the same sentiment. Aw man, first day and that guy's already got a girlfriend, the small member of the duo slouches in dismay. Dang. And I had my eyes set on her. The blonde looks away before he gets any more jealous and continues to follow the flow of the class to the locker rooms. I didn't know we'd share the same class. Izuku slowly stands back up as he rubs the throbbing spot on his neck. Once he recovers, he looks up with a tentative gaze. But Kyoka is caught off guard by how vibrant his eyes are compared to his smile as he says, I'm glad we are. Shut it. And she impulsively zaps him with her earjacks again. Izuku goes down a second time, shouting before his body thuds against the floor. The tall girl with her hair tied into a pointed ponytail casts them a troubled look. We should probably hasten ourselves so we don't upset our teacher. Her gaze goes from Izuku's corpse to the culprit. The bespectacled blue-haired boy nods behind her as he too takes in the scene. The girl whose skin is as pink as her hair shoves her way through them to get a look at the scene for herself. A massive grin stretches across her face, or maybe you two lovebirds could get changed TOGETHEERR, she sings songs teasingly while tapping the tips of the horns atop her head. Oh, they're so cute together. Another voice comes seemingly out of nowhere. It takes everyone a moment to realize the empty space that spoke wasn't a ghost, but an invisible girl only visible by her floating school uniform. Shut it. Kyoka's face burns bright red until she explodes with embarrassment and lashes out with her earjacks a third time. The coils snake through the air and stab themselves into Izuku's neck on either side. The boy spasms from the shock as he screams, I didn't even say or do anything this time. The bespectacled boy reaches down and grabs Izuku by the back of his school blazer's collar. We shouldn't be idling in the halls. He reprimands his classmate and begins dragging Izuku like luggage. I didn't do anything, Izuku continues to moan in agony as he's pulled into the boys' locker room. Once inside, his carrier hoists him up to stand upright on his own. By the way, I am Tenya Iida from Same Private Academy. The boy adjusts his glasses as he takes a step back to introduce himself. And then bows at the waist, I look forward to being your classmate as prospective heroes. Oh, me too. Izuku jumps in surprise. He hadn't been expecting the boy to be so polite. Izuku hastily returns the bow with several, I'm Izuku Midoriya, and I'm happy to meet you too. When he realizes the others are also in the locker room changing, he turns to face them too and bow, all of you. Nice to meet ya, Midoriya, a boy with his hair spiked downwards, throws Izuku a broad smile to show his appreciation before introducing himself, I'm Hantashiro. I'm Jiro Kirishima. It wasn't very manly to show up late, but you seem like a cool guy, and the boy beside him with red hair pointed upwards also returns the greeting. Izuku blinks once he's finished pulling his shirt over his head, oh. Thanks. Confused by that last part from Jiro about being manly. But the macho boy moves on from introductions to invading Izuku's personal space before Izuku can have the time to dwell on it. Whoa, what's with that little thing? Is that your quirk? Jiro is roped in by the small cord dangling from Izuku's sternum. Izuku's childhood friend scoffs from a nearby bench to make matters worse. The blonde finishes zipping up his PE jacket before shoving his hands in his pants pockets and storming off. Izuku opens his mouth to call after the boy, but swallows whatever words he could have said instead. He hadn't noticed Katsuki Bakugo in his class roster until now somehow, but he figures he shouldn't be surprised. Izuku's gaze returns to Jiro when he turns his head back to attention, and he places a hand over the wire exposed upon his bare chest. Why yeah. It's suddenly hard to speak to anyone at all. Neat. What's it do? But Jiro's energetic attitude doesn't seem to notice Izuku's reluctance. The redeed flashes an encouraging shark to the grin. Can we pull it? The blonde with a lightning streak perks up at the mention of Izuku's quirk and shares some of his own curiosity with a leering lean forwards. Is it a kinky thing? The short ball-headed boy that hangs out with the blonde chimes in from beside him. And Izuku soon finds himself backing away from nearly all the boys in his class as they all yearn to know about his quirk. He holds up his hands in an attempt to passively ward them off. Gee guys. I'm not very comfortable. Please provide Midoriya with space, but Tenya comes to his rescue by stepping in between him and the other boys so that he doesn't have to do anything else. If he doesn't wish to disclose his quirk's details, then it is not our place to push him. The bespectacled boy adjusts his glasses before glaring at everyone through them that dared to upset Izuku. Jiro leans back before realizing his mistake and slumping his shoulders despondently. Oh. Right. Sorry, Midoribro. His apology is sincere as he looks into Izuku's eyes. Yeah. I know what it's like to get teased for having a mutation-type quirk, so I'm sorry if I pressured you or anything. Hanta raises his elbows to show his quirk morph them into the shape of cylindrical tape dispensers as an attempt to empathize with Izuku. Nobody should feel embarrassed for something they can't control. A boy with a raven's head chimes in to show his support as well. It helps when more mutation types nod along in agreement, like a boy with 6 arms or another boy with an unevenly shaped head. I appreciate it, guys, but it's nothing like that. Izuku lowers his defensive hand stance to assure them before reaching around the back of his head with one to prod at his hair. I'll show you when the time is right. Hanta gives Izuku a thumbs up and another one of what must be his own trademarked grins. Good enough for me. The boy finishes pulling on his gym jacket before standing up to leave. Behind him, the blonde boy with a tail awkwardly scratches his head. We did just meet, so that makes sense, he shrugs before following Hanta out. We must not dally anymore anyways. Tenya chops at the air like it had also offended Izuku somehow, before gesturing for everyone to hurry, as Awa-sensei is waiting. Oh, crud. You're right. Izuku bristles when he remembers the stern teacher and rushes to finish getting dressed. He nearly trips as he slides a leg into his sweatpants. The blonde with the lightning bolt laughs as he passes by. Looks like your tardiness is rubbing off on us, Midoriya. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Which only causes Izuku to panic even more. He tries bowing apologetically while still sliding his foot through the other leg hole of his pants. Jiro laughs along as he claps Izuku on the shoulder. The boy stumbles but catches himself as the redeed exits. See ya out there, man. The slow steps from the only other remaining boy in the locker room barely make an audible tap on the floor's tile as he approaches Izuku. Heterochromic eyes peer out through multicolored hair that split down the middle as he says, your quirk. If you. Izuku waits patiently after the boy's voice trails off. Never mind, the tone turns cold before the boy pushes past. Izuku is left standing alone in the changing room, completely dumbfounded by the interaction. He exhales heavily before throwing on the last of his gym uniform and jogging after everyone. By the time that he catches up to his class, they're all already heading outside. Hey, Kyoka sidles up next to Izuku before matching his pace. What took you so long? And nothing, just took my time getting changed is all. Izuku tries not to glance in the direction of the bi-colored boy as the class congregates. Unbeknownst to him, the boy doesn't share that same sentiment and shamelessly stares at Izuku. You sure it has nothing to do with why that guy over there has been giving you the evil eye ever since you got here? But Kyoka notices another boy staring instead. Izuku follows her gaze to a familiar blonde. Crimson eyes meet emerald green. Izuku looks away, oh, that's just Ka, and falters when he thinks about the falling out that he had with his childhood friend. Bakugo. He and I grew up together, so we have a bit of a history. Izuku tries focusing on Kyoka rather than the blonde as he explains the delicate relationship as briefly as possible. Drama? Do tell, but Kyoka's curiosity urges Izuku to continue explaining. Before he can, the two get split apart by the girl with a brunette bob as she tries to get in between them. Sorry to interrupt, but I've been meaning to say ever since I saw you. She turns away from Kyoka to face Izuku in order to give him a bright and bubbly smile. You're that boy that saved me from the zero-pointer, right? Whoa. You took down the zero-pointer, maybe you are manly. Jiro perks up when he overhears what she said and speaks loud enough for everyone else to know the same thing he heard. And you did it saving a girl. The shortest of the class whines just as audibly while clutching the balls atop his head like stress relievers. That's hot, the girl with horns and a pink pigmentation bites the bottom of her lip while sizing Izuku up and down. She sneaks a glance towards Kyoka to make sure the girl doesn't notice her evaluation of the boy before returning to her ogling. Remarkable, Tenya admires Izuku along with everyone else. The sun gleams off his glasses as he pushes them up from the brim of his nose. Impressive, a girl with green hair presses a finger to her mouth as she studies Izuku with her own stare. She also adds a small ribbit that somehow sounds just as respectful. Perhaps I misjudged you, the girl with the pointy ponytail tilts her head to the side as she tries to see whatever everyone else is seeing in Izuku. Beside her, Kitsuki grumbles while rolling his eyes. Overwhelmed by all their praise, Izuku fumbles with his hands as he tries figuring out how to respond. Unable to meet their gazes, he looks upwards at the sky. Everyone just. I see you're all still stuck on socializing and causing a ruckus, but his sight gets drawn back down to the ground when he hears the arrival of his teacher. Aizawa's eyelids still sag so that they're half shut. His voice sounds just as exhausted as he looks as he says, "You're not a very rational bunch, are you?" The class collectively bows and apologizes, "Sorry sensei." That was a rhetorical question. Aizawa pinches the skin between his eyes as he closes them. After sighing and shaking his head, "Whatever. Just be quiet and listen," he gestures to the marked training grounds and begins explaining their presence there. Softball throwing, the 50-meter dash, the standing long jump. Any of those exercises ring some bells. They are your standard no quirk allowed gym tests in middle school. Well, you'll now do them again with your quirks as an apprehension test. The sights, markers and equipment suddenly looks familiar to the class. Someone is so thrilled about getting to use their quirk that they exclaim, "Whoa, awesome. Awesome." Which results in a harsh glare from their teacher. "Did you not hear me say this is a test? Whoever lands last on the placement chart will be deemed not worthy of hero material and will face expulsion." Aizawa suddenly looks like a villain when his face stretches into a malicious grin. "How's that for awesome?" "What? No way." The pink girl balks and becomes so pale that she loses her unique pigmentation. "See, can he really do that?" Hanta nervously scratches at the curved edge of an elbow while glancing around at the others. And the brunette girl tries raising her hand to object like she had in the classroom, but it's only the first day. Even if it weren't, that's totally unfair. Natural disasters, highway piloops, rampaging villains. I'd say the types of challenges you'll be facing should you follow the career path of a hero is also unfair, as Aizawa shuts her up with a logical response before flicking his focus to the rest of the class. "Consider this crash course your first taste of what that'll be like." Starting with Tenya, they start to murmur in solemn agreement. "So this is what it's like to strive for the top. As expected of UA." He flexes his fingers to make his hand into a fist as he gets himself into the right mental state for the challenge. "If we have no other choice but to overcome our obstacles." The girl with her hair tied back nods so that her ponytail bobs up and down with emotion. Izuku watches as everyone but himself comes to accept the teacher's terms. "Hey Midoriya. You gonna be okay? I mean, your quirk anxiety and all." Only when Kyoka places a hand on his shoulder does he get drawn out of his internal panic. He's relieved to see her consoling expression when he turns to look at her. Work anxiety. The brunette girl pipes in as she flicks her focus from Kyoka to Izuku for an answer. Kyoka shifts her hand to grab the brunette's shoulder next, a bit more roughly than she had with Izuku. Yeah, so keep your trap shut about what you saw when he saved you, alright. Her voice takes a sharp tone that surprises both the girl and Izuku before it levels out. For his sake, you'll do it if you're truly grateful. Oh okay, the brunette responds with a shaky nod. Then she stiffens straighter and nods with more resolve. I won't say anything. I promise. There's a commitment that time for her affirmation. Thanks. Izuku looks between both girls before turning his gaze downwards. He finds himself staring at his chest, placing a hand over his heart. But I'll have to use it eventually. And then there'll be no hiding. Izuku's voice catches in his throat before he can finish what he's saying. The Kugo. Aizawa singles out the blonde boy, but his shout gains everybody's attention. Izuku is especially drawn to the mention of his former friend. How far could you throw in middle school? Aizawa waves Katsuki over from the rest of the class. 67 meters, Katsuki mumbles his answer while kicking a pebble that's in his path to the teacher. Try now with your quirk, Aizawa holds out a softball for the boy to take. After Katsuki grabs it, the teacher produces a handheld device that will track the distance the ball gets thrown. Give it all that you've got, he nods for the blonde to go ahead and perform to the best of his abilities. Katsuki looks between the ball in his hand and the teacher as he registers the permission to use his quirk. Heh. You want me to add some boom to my pitch, eh? He tosses the ball up and down to catch a few times as a wicked grin spreads across his face. Then, Katsuki winds up for the pitch. And he lets loose. Die. A massive explosion erupts from his palm that launches the softball into the stratosphere. Die. Izuku questions the brash boy's war cry under the cheering chorus of oohs and ahs. Manly. Jiro shouts through his shark-toothed smile. Izuku swears that he sees stars in the Ritide's eyes. The applause diminishes when Aizawa starts speaking again. It's important for us to know our limits, the teacher's voice demands everyone's undivided attention as he explains the purpose of the physical exercises. That's the first rational step to figuring out what must be done to surpass those limits. He then shows them all the reading on the handheld device. 705 meters seriously. The invisible girl expresses her astonishment with a full body recoil and bounce. At least the boy with balls on his head takes notice of the emotive school uniform, her skirt flicking each way with her overly exaggerated motions. Whoa. A muscular boy with short spiked brown hair stares with wide eyes as he reads the number on the device alongside everyone else. Midoriya. Aizawa's shout startles Izuku so bad that the broccoli-headed boy almost falls from how hard he flinches. When Izuku looks around at his classmates and points towards himself for confirmation, his teacher nods. You're next, Aizawa raises his index finger to be aimed at the boy. Good luck, Kyoka winces sympathetically, but tries to be as encouraging as possible for him. Izuku smiles to show his appreciation. Get up here and show me what you've got, Aizawa ushers the boy forward with his finger. Izuku takes a hesitant step towards his teacher. His shaky hand places itself over the cord beneath his gym jacket as he's asked, or is being a hero, not your dream? Chapter 6. The crispy cool draft of wind whips over a Bambora, that same air catching a fragrance once the wave breaks. From that gust comes a light mist of brine, the ocean breeze coating people on the pier with a salty scent. Pichita catches a whiff of the smell, while his owner's errant strands of hair are tossed as roughly as the sea beneath their feet. The rotting posts of the old pier creak with each step as they push through the rush of wind. Izuku holds an ice cream cone in one hand and his dog's leash in the other. He earns a few looks as Pichita trots ahead of him, chainsaw mounted upon the mutt's head held high and proud like a unicorn's horn. The taste of a chocolate scoop is bittersweet as it melts and drips on the boy's hand. The sweltering sun beats down on them as much as it dries the wooden panels of the decking they walk on. A Ferris wheel moves in slow dizzying spins ahead of the duo, marking the end of the pier. Pichita yaps at a single seagull that pecks at scraps in a garbage can. The bird flies away frantically, disturbed by the noise. The fry that had been in the winged animal's beak falls onto the floorboards below, abandoned. Pichita picks up the piece of food with his tongue and swallows it for himself, licking his chops with what must be self-satisfaction. The small dog's name tag sways with a jingle when he looks up at his owner for some sort of praise. Izuku just laughs and bends down to pat his pet on the back. The vending machines occupying the guardrails hum as the two pass by. An elderly couple whisper while they occupy the bench by the Ferris wheel. Izuku sighs as he finishes his ice cream cone. He remembers a time at the beach when his mom had sat there and waited for him to finish riding the amusement ride, a canned coffee in hand that came from those automats. The napkin stained with ketchup blows past, slipping through one of the spaces in the planking after a few uptakes and downtakes. Pichita whines, looking up at his owner with concern. Izuku looks down before lowering himself onto one knee. "It's okay, boy." He pets behind one of the dog's ears. "We'll see mama when we get home." The fur coat brushing along the boy's fingers is just as soothing to him as it is to the animal. Izuku's nose inhales the smell of buttered popcorn, the added salty touch unclear of whether that's the snack or the sea still. A smile glosses the boy's mouth as he stands back up. He just had ice cream, but he figures he can share another tasty treat with his loyal companion. There's just enough yen in his pocket for the small serving size. Before he can approach the vendor to buy himself a bag though, the bliss of the beach is disturbed by alarming yells. Izuku turns his head to see what all the commotion is about. Civilians flee from the back of the pier, racing past the boy and his dog. Izuku searches a bit with his gaze before spotting the reason why. The elderly couple from earlier are cowering under the long blade of what looks like a cephalopodic pirate. The child's eyes widen with shock. He knows what's happening thanks to watching so many videos on the internet, but he's never seen a villain attack in person before. Reacting without a second thought, Izuku's legs move on their own. He lets go of Pichita's leash and runs towards the danger without any sense of how to help despite the desire to do so. The criminal's head turns, noticing him. The villain's face is the mantle of an octopus, tentacles trimming the bottom like a beard. The broadsword in one of the fiend's many suction-cupped hands flicks from the seniors to the minor. "Back off, stupid kid." A gurgled threat comes from the villain's mouth as he does an intimidating prodding gesture with his cutlass. Izuku doesn't listen. He ducks under the blade and latches onto one of the pirate's high-booted legs. Though small and light, the boy's improvised plan is to hold the criminal in place long enough for the seniors to escape. "Run!" Izuku shouts as he interlocks his fingers to strengthen his hold on the villain. He closes his eyes as tight as his grip when the criminal tries shaking him off in protest. "Get out of here." Izuku yells again in the hope that the elderly couple will listen and use his distraction as the chance they need to flee. When he hears the sound of feet pounding against wooden floorboards, he's relieved to know that he succeeded. But the boy forgot about his own safety. The pirate shoves the kid off, knocking Izuku on his butt. The villain growls as he swipes at the air with his sword. "Brat. Now look at what you've done." The old pair that Izuku rescued ran far enough away that the criminal can no longer victimize them. "They were going to be my payday." Izuku tries crawling backwards to also escape the villain's wrath, but the pirate simply stomps after him. Izuku whimpers when the steel sword raised above him glints in the sun, the villain's shadow enveloping him in darkness to see its sharpness all the better. He fantasizes All Might coming to his rescue and defeating the fiend in one blow. He imagines some hero, any hero, swooping in to save the day. He thinks they should have been here by now. The police, at least, could come to his aid. The boy wishes for his mother to be there with him so that she can protect him. Pichita. But Izuku instead finds his pet dog jumping in between him and the villain. The little orange animal snarls with as much intimidation as he can muster, while protectively placing himself between the criminal and his owner. Pichita plants his feet and barks between growls, baring his fangs. The pirate hesitates, taken aback by the tiny creature's ferocity, but quickly recovers his own tenacity. "Why, you little mutt." The villain points his weapon downwards and thrusts it forward. The jab makes the blade spear Pichita, eliciting a yelp from the small canine. "Pichita." Izuku shrieks as he catches his wounded pet in his arms. Tears stream out in large sprays like the blood spewing from the dog's injury. Izuku rolls over to get on his hands and knees, one arm clutching Pichita close to his chest so that he can make an effort to crawl away. The next yowl of agony comes from the blade passing through the boy's back and out the other end, stabbing into Pichita a second time. "Damn dogs and kids." The villain withdraws his sword and more blood leaks through the planks of the pier. He brings his blade back down so that it lances through Izuku's shoulder in order to express his rage. "I can't stand them." Izuku howls in torment as he holds Pichita close to him, their life liquids mixing into a sopping mess of red. The dagger cuts through them both a few more times, chopping at the boy and his pet until their breaths turn as ragged as their bodies. The villain cocks his boot back, winding up, and then kicks Izuku in the side with his pointed foot. The boy barrels through the wood railing of the pier, splinters raining down with him into the water below. He takes his dog with him, blood splashing against the ocean. Red blends with blue, the dark shades trailing behind Izuku and Pochita as they sink into the black depths of the sea. Izuku's eyelids become too heavy for him to hold open. The boy's hands slacken as they become numb, and he's no longer able to feel Pochita in his arms. He's colder than he's ever been before. The ocean swallows him and he succumbs to the void. Izuku opens his eyes, finding himself out in the forest instead of underwater. The sun still gleams down on him, making him squint until he diverts his gaze. The heavy pressure that had been pressing down on his chest remains. He sees that the weight is coming from Pochita, the dog seated atop him. Both of their injuries are gone. Izuku wonders if he somehow fell asleep and took a nap in the middle of the woods. Except, he begins to recognize the part of the wilderness that he's in. It's the spot that he found Pochita at. It's where they first met. "I've always loved listening to you talk about your dreams," a soft voice comes from Pochita's mouth that astounds Izuku. The boy becomes slack-jawed, unable to form his own words to respond with. It seems that Pochita wants him to listen instead of speak anyways when he says more firmly, "This is a contract." Izuku's chest blooms with heat, and he remembers the freezing ocean that had been killing him. "I'll give you my heart." Pochita leans in close and almost seems to sink into the boy's chest in exchange. The bond between the boy and his dog grows exponentially. Their life forces merge together and bring them back from the verge of death. Izuku's eyes close and he's once again transported to a different location. He's back submerged in blood and water, being baptized and reborn. He hears Pochita's whisper in his ear, "Show me your dreams," and wakes up. The virulent transformation bursts forth from the Itcher waves, the abrasive sound of chainsaws wailing upon startup. Blood oozes from deep gashes made by the chains of metallic teeth, but the lacerations from the villain's cutlass have miraculously healed. Jagged fangs bare themselves from within the demonic mechanical shape of a chainsaw for a head. Izuku's new form glowers at the pirate that cut him down through the harsh glow of amber eyes. What the foo, the villain gets cut off mid-sentence when Izuku swings one of his chainsaw-bladed arms. Literally. A tentacle appendage flops to the floorboards, writhing as it gushes blood out of the severed end. A harrowing howl escapes the criminal's throat as he clutches the dismembered part of his body. Red liquid oozes over the suction cups that cling to his ripped raw flesh. "The bastard." The pirate speaks with a tremor that matches his staggered steps away from the savage chainsaw child. The bumps of papilli covering the anthropomorphized octopus begin pulsating around the amputated area. Collagen fibers stretch over the torn tissue and begin regrowing skin around the epidermis. "You're lucky that I can regenerate lost limbs." The pirate curses under his breath as the tentacle that was taken from him gets replaced. The new appendage is a duller shade of pink from the rest of his Saracen body. Izuku primes the chainsaws protruding from his arms, revving them with the one attached to the base of his skull. "Good." His voice sounds as demonically distorted as he appears. The villain feels his skin prickle from the chill of the ocean air as the monstrous mutation minaciously growls through the grating noise of chainsaws. "Then I don't have to feel bad about chopping you into calamari." The villain turns his sword to block another haphazard swing of Izuku's bladed arm. The moving teeth grind into the steel, gradually chipping away at the metal. Exhaust fumes seethe through the boy's sharpened teeth before he chops upwards with his other arm. The pirate's cutlass snaps in two from the combined sawing motions. The tip clatters against the pier's planking, while the other half remains clasped in the criminal's suction cup grip. Izuku slashes at the villain with wild broad strokes, giving his target a chance to evade. That doesn't ease any of the pressure on the criminal though. "Oi. Christ, kid." The trimming of a chainsaw nicks where the cephalopodic man's deltoid should be, ripping into flexible webbing instead. Blood splatters the deck, spilling from the wound. Izuku heaves forward to get another cut in, but misses when the criminal sidesteps. The villain kicks the crazed child away with a desperate shout, "Are you trying to kill me?" Izuku's feet slide across the pier's slick surface, only stopping when he stabs the boarding with his arm saw blades. The boy's body bends inward, but his modified head raises itself to glare at the villain. Spittle flies from the living engine's maw, fangs razor sharp and gnashing together. "You killed Pochita." Izuku roars with the sound of his chainsaws. The grudge over a dog. The villain stares incredulously as the boy tears his saw blades free from the deck. Terrified and without a weapon to defend himself, the octopus hybrid spews a jet of black ink from his siphon-like mouth. The wall of darkness blinds Izuku momentarily, allowing the criminal to scramble out of the raving chainsaw's reach. Suddenly, a boat comes through the tide beneath the pier, much to the villain's relief. The ship is steered by a fellow cephalopod criminal. In's mouth. The octopus twin bellows to his partner from below. "Brother." Innsmouth waves his arms high to signal for the boat to turn back around for him. Izuku manages to wipe away the ink covering his eyes, just as the villain grins with newfound confidence. Dark rings smudge the green under the yellow orbs of the chainsaw mount as the boy watches the villain run for the railing. Pray we don't meet again, kid. Innsmouth hops off the pier and lands on his brother's boat below in order to escape. Izuku takes a step forwards to chase after Pichita's killer, but his leg gives out and he winds up falling forward onto his knees. All he can do is watch helplessly as the villain gets away. The chains on the saws stop running and he lets out a wet cough. The blades begin to retract. Izuku's baby teeth replace the elongated fangs and his face morphs back to its normally freckled state. He's left a sobbing mess in the middle of the blood-stained pier. Dangling from Izuku's sternum is the same pullcord that had been Pichita's tail, the only remaining part of his dog. Chapter 7. Izuku stares down at the ball within his grasp. His fingers curl around its spherical shape, clenching tightly to not let it slip away. All of his classmates are watching with anticipation after Katsuki's fireworks show, expecting something of equal level. Though his teacher doesn't have any expression other than resting bitch face, Izuku is pretty sure that Izawa is in a similar state of suspense. There's not much to be done should he transform right here and now, but he knows that he can't just simply toss the ball normally either. Weighing his options, he shifts his hold on the ball. That's when he gets an idea. He opens his mouth to ask Izawa about the rules of the throw, but something comes out other than words. More murky fluid bubbles up the boy's throat until it breaches the exit of his mouth. A jet of red liquid spills out, the copper taste making Izuku retch. The firm grip he has on the softball suddenly becomes very weak, loosening and allowing it to slip free from his fingers. He hunches over when his sides ache, and that pain blossoms into another wave of blood climbing out. Izuku's throat burns more than his ribsage as he coughs on his own bodily fluids. Midoriya. Kyoka moves forward to help her friend as soon as she notices his extreme nausea. But the other students crowd in front of her, blocking her path. They express their own concerns and drown the girl out. Bro, are you okay? Jiro refrains from pushing past the collection of students. His arms extend and retract, unsure of whether to reach out and help her stay back. Nod your head if you require CPR. Tenyu tries shouting over the concerned crowd as he robotically searches with a stiff neck for some sort of medical practitioner. The vein bulges from Izawa's forehead before he has enough of the commotion and silences them all in one fell swoop. Everybody just calm down. The class recoils in fear from the scary shout. Meanwhile, Izuku still struggles to get a hold on his breathing. Midoriya, are you feeling alright? Can you tell me what's wrong? Izawa places a consoling hand on the boy's back as he leans down to the same level. I'm fine, sensei. Izuku wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. The blood on his lip smears across his cheek from the motion. Just. Another coughing fit stalls the boy's speech. When he finally gets a handle on himself and he comes up with an excuse, his eyes widen with realization as he says, it's just allergies. All the times that his mother had similar hacking habits suddenly set off alarms in his mind. Allergies don't cause internal bleeding. Izawa pinches the bridge of his nose as an exhibited sign of vexation. When his hand falls away from his face, he doesn't hide his frown either. I think you should go see Recovery Girl, though the teacher's tone conveys an amount of worry Izuku usually only hears from his mother. Izuku forces himself to stand upright, trying to blow off the incident as casually as he can. Really? I'm fine, but his hoarse throat heaves a nasty cough that puts him back down. Izuku covers his mouth with his hand as he gags. When he pulls his hand away, blood dots his palm. Let me rephrase that. You're going to see Recovery Girl. Izawa's tone turns stern as he helps Izuku regain some composure. The elaboration of that sentence being an order and not a request forces the boy to numbly nod in agreement with his teacher. Somebody should walk him there. A few of the students part for Kyoka when she speaks up amidst the grouping of them all. When the girl gets a few stares, especially a sly one from the horned pinkette, she blushes profusely. To make sure he gets there safely. Her earjacks wriggle with her arms as she tries to conceal her embarrassment. Enya stiffens into a statute stance. Excellent idea. I volunteer. Oblivious to the girl's mortification as he offers himself for the suggested duty. I could take him. The boy with multicolored hair surprisingly proposes himself to perform the task as well. Though his demeanor is far more casual than the bespectacled boys. I was thinking maybe myself. Kyoka timidly taps the tips of earjacks together the way one would with their fingers. The shy stature and quiet voice would have gone unnoticed if not for her pink classmate's shit-eating grin. Or ICOULD, the Pinket teases her peer by getting up in Kyoka's personal space and wiggling her eyebrows suggestively. Nobody needs to go with him, but Izawa puts a stop to the fun with his usual grumpy attitude. The teacher turns towards Izuku and turns down his temper to ask, "You're capable of getting to the nurse's office alone, right?" "Why yeah. I'll be fine," Izuku shakily nods before facing his class and forcing an assuring smile. "Thanks for offering though, everybody." "Of course." Tenya returns the smile with one of his own. But Kyoka's having a hard time showing any equal optimism. She quells her worries well enough to look Izuku in the eye and say, "You'd better be okay." To which Izuku gives her a single nod in response. Wow. First day and someone is already about to croak, the blonde with a lightning streak in his hair whispers to the bald-headed boy beside him. Then he realizes there's a girl that resembles a frog on his other side and awkwardly whistles. No offense. He scratches his head nervously with a forced laugh in a failed attempt to make the wisecrack slide. As Izuku heads for the facility doors to go back inside, he notices somebody watching from the sidelines of the field. Recognizable by the man's extremely gaunt appearance, the boy recalls the skinny blonde as the person he'd bumped into while looking for his class in the halls. Though the odd fellow's eyes are sunken in, bright blue orbs find Izuku's eyes and convey compassion. A breeze brushes through Izuku's green curls as he passes by the man's hiding spot. Then he steps inside UA and leaves the blonde behind. Though he's curious about the stranger watching the performance of he and his classmates' quirks, he's far more concerned about the recent revelation of his mother hiding her bloody cough from him. That is, if his hunch about her using the same excuse as him is true. The boy's thoughts linger on his mom's well-being as he heads for the nurse's office and not his own, despite a few more wet coughs escaping his mouth on the way there. When Izuku finally reaches the closed entrance to Recovery Girl's small infirmary, he overhears the tail end of a joke muffled by the barrier. "Did you hear about the guy who lost his whole left side? He's alright now." The comedian's voice is one that the boy is all too familiar with that he knows exactly who's on the other side of the door before he slides it open. Present Mick sits on the edge of a medical mat where he has the old nurse giggling. The hero notices Izuku before she does. "Hey little listener. Don't know you can't tell a knock-knock joke without knocking first?" Izuku blushes in embarrassment before trying to pull the door back closed. I didn't think about his tugs on the sliding mechanism work to no avail. Sorry. His face flushes even redder when he hears Present Mick laughing along with Recovery Girl. "It's no problem, dearie, come on in." The school's nurse ushers him to enter her office once she stops giggling. Present Mick nods next to her. "It was only a joke, kiddo." Izuku notices the hero's usual hairstyle of a singular spiked tuft has been opted for a neatly tied man bun. It's odd seeing the pro during his off hours, an ordinary outfit instead of his uniform, making him appear like a civilian. Don't tell me you ain't got a sense of humor. Mick must notice Izuku staring since he takes to twirling his pencil stash like it's a nervous tick. Oh. I dunno how I didn't realize. I listen to your podcasts all the time." Izuku jumps to assure his idol that he didn't take any offense before bashfully rubbing the back of his head and admitting his stare was starstrucken instead of solemnity. Hearing that, the hero perks up with a widespread grin. Ho. A fan, eh? He snatches a sticky note from a dispenser and steals a pen from Recovery Girl's white coat before asking, "What's your name, little listener? I'll give you an autograph and a shout out the next time I go live." Izuku's head nearly snaps off from the amount of whiplash that goes into his eager lean forward. Really, that'd be amazing. Tiny glimmers of light dance in his eyes like stars twinkling in the sky. Present Mick laughs before gently bopping the boy on the head with his pen. "Not without your name, it won't be." Oh. Right. Izuku slaps his hand against his face when he realizes his mistake. Then he quickly bows in order to properly present himself. "My name is Izuku Midoriya, sir." Recovery Girl shakes her head in disbelief. "No need to be so formal with this goofball." Midoriya the nurse gestures with her specialized cane towards the hero. "Hisashi here is probably more childish than you are," before handing him two small white devices. "It's a wonder Nezu ever allowed you to teach." "Hey." Present Mick defensively whines despite not actually taking any offense to the teasing. His voice reverberates throughout the small medical station, shaking the window's pane and nearly causing the glass to burst. "I told you to be cautious about using your quirk when you get too rambunctious." Which earns the hero a smack on the head from Recovery Girl's walking stick. Due to the cane's abnormal size and depth, it leaves a giant welt on the man's skull. It's shouting like that which led you to needing those hearing aids. She gestures to the two tiny objects that she handed him, as though she never walloped him though. Hearing aids. Izuku disregards the nurse's poor bedside manner for the same reason. He's intrigued by the two pods that the hero sticks into the crevices of his ears. He wouldn't be here if he didn't damage his hearing with his own quirk all the time, recovery girl tuts with a wag of her cane. The blunt object's movement puts the hero on edge, making him wince reflexively. One of my drawbacks, kid, everybody has them, Mick chuckles to calm his own nerves before snapping his fingers together and pointing towards the boy, but don't go telling anybody about it, okay? It's our little secret. Oh of course. I won't tell anybody. Izuku nods like a bobblehead that's been jostled to work to show his allegiance. Which earns him the hero's autograph as an award. Now, why are you here, young man? Recovery girl diverts her attention from present Mick to address Izuku once she's finished finalizing the man's report. The elderly woman adjusts the visor fixed to her face like they're glasses to get a good look at her patient as she mumbles, that hard ass wouldn't have sent one of his students here during class if it wasn't for good reason. Izuku's eyes widen in shock when he hears the way that recovery girl refers to his teacher. Oh, Aizawa-sensei ain't so bad. He feels obligated to defend the man after seeing how concerned Aizawa had been for him. Mick laughs hard. He laughs so hard that he has to hold his stomach with one hand and slaps his knee with the other. Good to know you've already seen through his tough guy act. The hero even has tears in his eyes that he needs to wipe away with a flick of his finger. Hush. Let the boy finish. Recovery girl gets him to quiet down when she threateningly hoists her cane over her head. Mick recluses with his arms defensively shielding himself as he nods to show his surrender. Izuku blinks as he witnesses the odd interaction. But he shakes it off just as quickly as it passes. I just started coughing up. Blood. The matter of his health is much too glaring for him to worry about heroes getting abused by old ladies right now. Mick and the nurse share a quick glance before recovery girl starts searching through one of her desk's drawers. Really now? Any theories as to why? Izuku shrugs and stares down at the floor. No. That's why he sent me over. Grinding the crook of his shoe into the tile suddenly feels as oddly calming as it did to pet Pachita. Alright then, have a seat and I'll run some tests. Recovery girl finally finds the tool that she was searching for and gestures to have Izuku sit down. In order for the nurse to make room, however, she first shoos her other patient away from the spot. As for you, you're a grown pro hero, quit your whining and get back out there, she practically chases present Mick out. Oh, but I didn't even get a lollipop. Mick complains like the man-child he is as he's pushed out the door. His heels screech against the floor in protest as he tries to stop the mad woman from forcing him to leave. Shoo, you buffoon. But it's no use when she resorts to violence again by raising her giant walking stick. The massive syringe-styled cane swings like a broadsword that the hero has to dodge with a duck. Nice meeting you, Midoriya. Mick shrieks with a wave goodbye before fleeing the area with speeds that would rival the pro-hero ingenium. The blonde even manages to kick up dust in his wake like smoke from an engine's exhaust pipes. You too. Izuku calls after Mick in the hopes that the hero can still hear him. Then, recovery girl slides the office door closed. Now. Tell me. When did you start coughing up blood? The nurse uses a stethoscope to check the boy's heartbeat first. During our quirk apprehension test, Izuku glances nervously at the other medical equipment she has on standby though. Some of the tools look like they'd cut more than his chainsaws once he transforms. That man. Skipping ceremonies and straight to business. Recovery girl's face tightens like she just sucked on a lemon. She finishes listening to his heartbeat and begins to take his blood pressure while asking, was it outside? Izuku raises an eyebrow, surprised that the woman guessed correctly. Yeah. He wonders where she's going with her analysis so far. You could have just been suffering from nerves or the heat, you seem like the jumpy type that you might get a case of the first day jitters. The nurse shares her theory as she moves on to the next test. A weird bracelet straps itself around each of Izuku's wrists like a pair of handcuffs. Oh, you think? That's a relief. Izuku relaxes when he hears that his condition may not be so bad. He has a sliver of hope that his mother may just have seasonal allergies after all. Or, oh dear. Until recovery girl reads the output on the device attached to Izuku's wrists. The boy stiffens when he hears the tone of her voice. What is it? He worries for the worst as he tries to gauge her pensive frown. Recovery girl removes the device from Izuku's wrists to replace with a wooden mouth stick. Let me take a quick swab from your mouth, she instructs him to open wide so that she can place it under his tongue. Ah, Izuku tries not to gag on the stick in his mouth as he lets her move it around to get a sufficient amount of saliva. Once recovery girl is finished, he swallows the remaining amount of spit that she didn't get. But boy, he's suddenly taken by surprise when she shoves something else into his mouth though, have a gummy much to his relief, it's just a sweet treat that tastes like cherry, once he begins chewing on it. Thanks, he mumbles through a mouthful of the small snack before swallowing it down. Recovery girl sticks the DNA sample into a machine that quickly provides results. The nurse looks through a microscope at the slides. Oh my. Her tone from earlier hasn't changed. Midoriya, does anyone in your family exhibit similar coughs often? She spins around in her chair to face the boy that she's taken to studying. My mom. I think. Izuku begins squirming from his spot now that his worry has ventured from himself to his mother. He finds it hard to sit in place as he waits for recovery girl to deliver his diagnosis. I see, the nurse hums as she cross-references her findings once more. Only after she's certain of the result, she shares with him her discovery. I believe you've inherited a disease through your gene pool. Izuku's fingers curl to make his hands into fists when she adds, quite severe too, I'd say. He finds it hard to believe. The room suddenly seems out of focus. He sits back, trying not to pass out. Really? He breathlessly asks for confirmation that this isn't some elaborate prank set up between her and present Mick. He idly waits in denial of the harsh reality. Yes, I'm surprised you failed to notice or be checked until now, but recovery girl pulls no punches and tells him the truth. She sounds sympathetic, but it still hits the boy hard. What do I do? What can be done? Izuku sits forward to lay his head in his hands as he tries not to cry. If it were just him, he'd not be so worried. His mother though. He feels himself becoming numb when he realizes that she's been keeping her condition from him all this time. Not much, I'm afraid. Recovery girl gets up from her chair and uses her cane as a crutch to get near the boy. Once she's in his proximity, she places a consoling hand on his knee. First and foremost, I think we should call your mother. She tries to sound as soothing as possible when she sees how rough he's taking the news. Oh, yeah. He numbly nods when he thinks about actually talking to her about it. Now that he's inherited her sickness, he can only imagine how she'll take the news herself. She's gonna freak out, he sighs in sorrow. I can imagine, recovery girl nods in understanding. She gestures to a spare cot for him to lay on before going for the landline phone. In the meantime, you can rest here and take the rest of your classes off. Hearing that he'll be kept in the nurse's office and isn't allowed back to class, Izuku sits up straight with a sudden renewed source of energy. He tries to argue, but. No buts, young man. I don't want you straining yourself any more than you already have, but gets met with a whack on the head like present Mick had. Izuku rubs the throbbing bump that recovery girl leaves behind. But it's the first day. His whine is both a mixture of physical and emotional pain as he surrenders to the nurse. He's led to the bed against his will and plops down in defeat. Which means you won't miss much. Recovery girl has the kindness to offer him assurances at the very least before leaving him to wallow in self-pity. I'll write the proper notes for your teachers that you should be fine. Okay. Izuku slumps over to rest his head on the bed's soft pillow with a sigh. Before long, he's closing his eyes and drifting off to sleep. The boy dreams of drowning. He inhales his own blood, left unable to breathe. All that he can see is a deep depth of red. The liquid washes over him as he sinks deeper and deeper. He can't swim no matter how hard he paddles. There's a scream that bubbles up in his throat, but it comes out as a silent cough. And then. He looks down at his chest, feeling the warmth of his heart. The string that hangs from his sternum floats in the clouded crimson sea. Izuku grabs the small handle and pulls. Vegeta. Izuku shoots up from his bed in a sweat. His body heaves as he breathes heavily, every pant as rugged as he looks. The green curls atop his head are matted down, just as drenched as the rest of himself. Izuku looks down to see he has a finger interlocked with the small handle of his chest's pulley string. A strange sound escapes his mouth, a mix between a sob and a choked cough. Then he lets the wire go and falls back down onto the cot. It's not his own. He remembers, he's in the nurse's office. The clock in the corner shows that hours have passed since he fell asleep. His mother should be arriving by now. Izuku climbs off the cot and looks around for recovery girl. When he sees that the nurse is nowhere to be found, he works up the courage to slide open the office door himself. He nearly has a heart attack when he finds someone on the other side. The girl opposite of him jumps in equal alarm, a startled shout escaping her lips. Jiro? Izuku recognizes his friendly classmate, but can't conceal his surprise to see her. Ioka is just as shocked by the sudden removal of the barrier between them, but contains her composure in contrast to the boy. She averts her gaze and twirls a jack absent-mindedly. Hey. Izuku adopts her strategy, avoiding looking directly at her while adorning a mild blush. He fidgets in place as he tries to think of something to say back before settling on asking, "What are you doing here?" Suddenly, Kyoka flares up with her line of sight lifting to glare at him. "I came to check on you, stupid." She snaps incredulously. Realizing her reaction was a bit much, she recoils and simmers down. I was worried about you." Her gaze falls back to her feet. Izuku blinks after registering her outburst. It takes him a while to process, but he eventually jumpstarts his brain when he scratches the back of his head. "Oh, I never did come back to class, huh?" A dry laugh escapes his lips when he thinks about his first impression to his peers. "Everyone kept asking about you," Kyoka consoles him as though reading his mind. When Izuku hums skeptically, she shrugs. "Well, mostly everyone." Her own laugh is just as null and void of humor. "Like you said, that wasn't my best impression to make on the first day," Izuku means to sigh, but groans instead as he places his head in his hands. "Could have been worse," Kyoka tries assuring him again with a shrug, but then remembers that he can't see her with his hands covering his eyes. She tries cheering him up another way instead. I took some notes for you." "Oh? Thanks." Which does manage to make him look up at her. He pauses and asks, "So, classes are over, huh?" Kyoka nods in confirmation before tilting her head to the side. "Are you able to head home now?" "I guess." Izuku glances around as though he's searching for the answer. When he finds nobody other than himself and Kyoka still, he shrugs and explains, "Recovery girl called my mom, and I fell asleep waiting for her." "Gotcha," Kyoka nods. A moment of silence passes between the two before she takes to her habit of curling an ear jack on a finger. "I was gonna say we could walk together, but..." Izuku offers her a smile as he responds, "Maybe next time." "Next time," to which Kyoka agrees and smiles in return. Her lips level out as she looks past Izuku and remembers they're standing outside of a medbay. "Hey. Can I ask you what that cough was all about?" Izuku's mind buffers, the boy caught off guard by the question. He looks away, mulling over his answer in his head. He suddenly understands, to an extent, why his mother had kept her illness hidden from him. It was nothing major. He blows off the matter by forcing his smile to come back. "I'll be fine." Though, Kyoka doesn't seem so convinced. "You know. I can hear a person's heartbeat to tell if somebody is lying to me." Her soft tone sets Izuku on edge, and he's suddenly very aware of the pounding organ in his chest that she's speaking of. The girl reaches out, quickening the thrumming before her hand even makes contact with his chest. "But yours ever since I met you has always sounded." Her eyes are as alluring as her lingering voice when Izuku looks into them, different. Izuku's lips part, exhaling the breath that he didn't realize he had been holding in. Different. He stutters as he feels the warmth of Kyoka's gentle hand transferring to his tone of voice. The girl nods, leaning in with a movement, her lips also parting to say more. Oh my, but there comes an intrusion to their private moment before things can continue. A woman with green hair like Izuku's glances between them as she coyly asks, "Am I interrupting something?" "Mom?" Izuku jumps back at the same time that Kyoka retracts her hand. He stares at his mother like a deer that's been caught in headlights, his face as red as a tomato. Kyoka matches the boy's hue, glowing like a red ruby. She flails about in such discomposure that Inko can't help but be reminded of her son as she squeaks out, "Mrs. Midoriya. You must be. Please, call me Inko, dear." The greenette gives Kyoka a polite smile before shifting her focus to her son and changing her expression to something far from a smile. "Izuku hasn't done me the pleasure of telling me your name though." Izuku's panicked reaction and then pleading glance urges the girl to answer, Kyoka. Kyoka Jiro. Embarrassed enough for one day, she starts backing away and gestures with a pointed thumb over her shoulder. I should probably go." "Of course, you wouldn't want to keep your parents waiting." Inko bows to bid her a farewell before waving goodbye. "Lovely meeting you." "Why you too?" Kyoka shouts over her shoulder before taking the chance to flee. Be bye. Jiro." Izuku whispers to himself as he lowers the hand he was about to wave with. Abandoned by his friend to his mother's vices, he accepts his fate by bravely facing his mother head on. "Well, and here I was worried about my baby the whole way here, just to find you getting all lovey-dovey with a girl." She crosses her arms and gives him a disappointed stare, as opposed to an angry rant though. Izuku is caught off guard, but quickly recovers. "I wasn't lovey-dovey, Mom." She's just a friend. He waves his hands in denial with a matched shake of his head. He winds up casting a look down the hall to make sure Kyoka didn't overhear them. Tracking his gaze, Inko raises a brow. For a friend, she sure did enjoy feeling up your chest and smirks when she sees the boy's blush return. She laughs at how easy it is to get one over on him. Mom? Izuku whines indignantly to make her stop. When Inko does finish teasing her son, each of their faces level out and they both become serious. Mom. Izuku meets her gaze and takes a tentative step forwards. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? Oh, Izuku. Inko's eyes water as she holds her son's stare. I'm not sick. Her response almost relieves the boy, even though he knows it's a lie. Although, he can tell by the sad tone of her voice that she's not well. He's not fooled when she pulls him into a hug. It's until Inko says, I'm dying, that he realizes she was just clarifying the severity of the disease and not telling him she'd be okay. Things wouldn't be okay again for a long time. Chapter 8. A searing sensation of pain pulls at his face, taking the rest of his head with the force. All of the structure to his neck tightens, straining with the arched backwards drag of parabola. No longer can he see anything but the blue sky, colors blotting his vision with the clouds. A thin wire swings in the air, reflected by a dim beam of sunlight. He can't locate his torso or his legs, but he knows they're falling with him thanks to that skinny little string. As he descends, he can feel his chest tightening. The boy's bated breath quickens while he braces for impact. The bright atmosphere above him darkens as it's covered by a cement ceiling. When he touches down with a mixture of gravel and dirt beneath his body, he stares straight upwards at the bottom of a bridge. A canal runs behind him, the flow of the river's resonating sound flooding his ears. Then the cackles of bullies break through his hearing like little popping bubbles. His vision swims and he feels like he's drowning when a warm liquid dribbles down from his right nostril. The same way he had been dragged here against his will, Izuku is manhandled by the group of 3 other boys to get propped upright. Izuku's view of the overpass's belly shifts to his tormentors. Suddenly, his brain registers the reason why his face is laced with so much pain. He had been punched. He thinks his nose is broken, but the bullies won't let him check. Overly extended fingers grip the back of Izuku's head to hold it in place, the nails digging into the boy's scalp. The stretched appendages belong to a bully whose school uniform is unbuttoned and disheveled, the delinquent fashion sense topped off by a backwards cap. He goes to Aldera Junior High the same as Izuku. The head of Izuku, side by side with his former friend Katsuki Bakugo, is a plump boy kept afloat by 2 draconic wings. The flying bully's rounded face grins ear to ear, smile reaching the sideburns of brown shaven hair. He snickers before ceasing the flap of his wings and stepping foot on the earth's soil. Grandpa says you got a quirk now. Katsuki forms a fist and smacks it against the palm of his other hand, cracking his knuckles so that the resounding pop sounds like sparks coming from his quirk. Show us what it is, shitty Deku. The spiky-haired blonde spits his demands that literal saliva droplets spray out of his mouth. Izuku struggles in vain against the grip of elongated fingers coming from the bully behind him. The sound of rushing water in the canal reminds the boy of his transformation on the pier. Tears prickle at his eyes and his lip quivers before the rest of his body begins shaking. I can't. Katsuki's eye twitches, his knee-jerk reaction to the refusal one of anger. Why the fuck not? The blonde glares into the innocent green orbs of his former friend with burning red dots in search of an honest answer. When Izuku doesn't respond right away, Katsuki comes to his own assumed conclusion. You think it's better than mine, nerd. I doubt that, the bully with stretched fingers cackles confidently. A cocky grin stretches across his face as he tilts his head to one side. You sure you heard right, Tsubasa? Maybe your grandpa meant someone else. I know what I heard. The bully with wings bristles before crossing his arms. He holds the pose while pondering to himself in deep contemplation for a bit. Then, snaps his fingers upon having an epiphany. I know. Get his shirt off. What? The boy forcing Izuku to stay still jerks Izuku with him when he recoils in shock. Katsuki doesn't have quite as outward a perturbed reaction other than his face scrunching up and the question, why? Tsubasa flaps his arms at his sides with a beat of his wings, agitated that his friends aren't listening to him. There's supposed to be something attached to his chest, just do it. He begins stomping towards Izuku to prove his claims himself. However, a grin finds itself on his face when Katsuki comes with him moments later. And no, wait. Izuku's eyes widen when he sees the 2 bullies reaching for him. He twists and turns his body so that they have a hard time removing his school blazer. The resistance is met with extra force, the 3rd bully's fingers clinging to him tighter. Hold still, fucking Deku. Katsuki complains when Izuku successfully makes the fabric of his shirt slip through the blonde's fingers. The bully's victim only prolongs the inevitable though. Eventually, Tsubasa's and Katsuki's combined efforts rip Izuku's top covering off. A string dangles from the boy's bare chest, earning a sneer from Katsuki. What the fuck is this shit? Whoa, talk about lame, Tsubasa gives the wire an unimpressed look. It had slipped free from Izuku's clothes when he had been punched, but the winged boy and the other bullies had failed to notice it until now, due to how small and thin it is. Katsuki turns his head side to side, giving the anatomically incorrect attachment a more analytically critical stare. The blonde's eyes squint until they can't narrow anymore without closing. What are you? A shitty wind-up doll? He sounds disappointed while his face morphs into a deep frown. The bully holding Izuku breaks into a fit of laughter. Yeah. You gonna play us a lullaby if we pull on it? His stretched fingers probe for the thin string's handle with a tiny twiddle. Izuku draws away from the prying hand, panic overtaking his features. No. Don't. But his rebellion is easily overpowered, and he can only watch with wide eyes as the string attached to his sternum gets pulled on. It's not Izuku's words that sputter, but the ignition of chainsaws that rev themselves to life. Metallic teeth wrest away the flesh of the boy's forearms, the mutilated meat making way for the bar that cleaves between his ring finger and middle finger. Blood doesn't just gush out, the liquid bursts forth in violent jets of red. Izuku's face is torn down the middle, ripped apart until the mangled flesh caught on the suddenly sprouted saw's chain, flings off the sharp bits of steel and splatters into the dirt. Pointed fangs and a yellow glare surfaces from the groom. Holy shit. The boy that had been holding onto Izuku loses his grip immediately. He retreats from the chainsaws to hide behind Katsuki and Tsubasa. What the fuck? Katsuki is aghast by what he sees. Sweat dribbles down his forehead and he pants heavily, overwhelmed by the heat of what feels like a dangerous fire that's just been lit. Izuku recluses from them, pointing the chainsaw sprouting from his arms downwards so that they do no accidental harm. I told you not to. His voice holds an echo of how he'd usually sound that matches his mannerisms, but there's a malformed quality to it that still leaves the bullies wary. Don't be scared. I won't hurt you, I swear. Izuku's sharp teeth glisten with his own blood. This is crazy. Tsubasa takes a step back to put some distance between the chainsaw boy and himself. The wings on his back quiver, ready to take flight should he be forced to choose between fight or flight. Izuku's chainsaw-mounted head swivels towards Katsuki, desperation radiating from the yellow orbs that serve as his set of eyes. The blonde boy flinches back when he meets the stare, but he at least recognizes the pleading shout that comes from the demonic visage, Kaken. Fuck off. I ain't scared. Katsuki snaps when he hears the annoying nickname that the nerd had given him when they were younger. He's reminded of the timid boy that he grew up with as a neighbor and looks past the chainsaw transformation. He's still the same old weakling Deku. Tsubasa shoots Katsuki a look of uncertainty, still iffy about Izuku's metamorphosis. He keeps his feet planted, refusing to go anywhere near the macabre of chainsaws. But Bakugo. Now he's got a. The boy pauses to glance over at Izuku before lowering his voice just above that of a whisper, a villain's quirk. Still hiding behind Tsubasa, the bully with a backwards baseball cap hears his friend and has an epiphany. No way. I just realized. The delinquent raises one of his shaking stretchy fingers to point at Izuku. You don't think his dad is Toxic Chainsaw, do you? Hearing that accusation about his absent father, Izuku jumps upright to refute those claims. No. He works overseas. He's not. Yeah, right. I bet that was a lie your mom told you to make you feel better. The long-fingered bully yells over Izuku's shouting before cowering behind the boys that he's using as human shields. Your dad's totally a villain. Tsubasa nods in agreement with his friend while trying to swap places to no longer be the one positioned in front. No. He's not. Izuku wails through sharpened teeth as his arm saws carve into the ground soil. The bullied boy would be weeping if his transformation allowed him to. Tell them, Kaken. Izuku pleads to his childhood friend to defend his family's honor with hopeful desperation. Katsuki holds his tongue, staring at the bizarre monsterification of Izuku Midoriya. He studies the blood-soaked school uniform dangling from the boy's body, the same as the string attached to the base of Izuku's chest. Brown like the dirt, the sleeves are shredded from where the chainsaws came out. Katsuki knows for a fact that quirk isn't even your own, is it? Tsubasa twists his head to look towards Katsuki in confusion. Huh? What's that mean? But the blonde ignores his fellow bullying partner. Katsuki's focus is on Izuku even while the boy avoids looking back at him. Is it, Deku? Katsuki shouts to regain Izuku's attention. Slowly, Izuku raises his steel-covered head. The chainsaw protruding from the base of the boy's skull is a familiar sight to the blonde, even if he hadn't seen it on Izuku before now. Kaken. Pachita is. And Izuku's weak wet voice is all the confirmation that Katsuki needs to finish putting two and two together. Tsubasa shares a quick glance with the boy next to him, not quite getting it himself. Bakugo, what did you mean by that? The shaven-headed bully tries prying for answers again when the baseball hat bully shakes his head. Quiet. Katsuki snaps for the two extras to shut up. Then he looks back at Izuku and asks about the nature of his childhood friend's quirk. It was your shitty dog, wasn't it? Chapter 9. Izuku rests his head on his hand, propped up by an arm. The boy's gaze is cast down at the lead of the pencil in his other hand that scribbles back and forth. Instead of taking notes during his classes, he's currently doodling on the paper atop his desk. Today is proving no better a day of school than yesterday, despite the regular lessons thus far. He can't focus with his mother's poor health on his mind either. When present, Mick urges everyone to participate. Alrighty. Everybody get those hands up if you know the answer to the question. Show me some spirit. Izuku keeps his head down like everybody else. The hero does his best to make the lessons as entertaining as possible, but Izuku just isn't in the mood. It's not until the afternoon when hero training is scheduled that the boy becomes more alert. A gust of wind blowing through the door instead of the window raises the hairs on his neck. Heavy footfalls announcing a huge presence catches his ears. The green in his eyes becomes more vibrant when he looks upwards. The number one hero, All Might, enters the classroom. Izuku's favorite idol is enough to lift his spirits, perking him right up. I am here. The symbol of peace announces his arrival with an extravagant flourish of the cape that trails behind his brisk movements, coming through the door like a normal person. The boisterous boom of the massive man's voice travels through the room, getting the class pumped like a crowd at a concert. It's All Might. Jiro excitedly exclaims the obvious with an eager lean forward. Stars dance in his eyes, beaming as bright as his pointed grin. Incredible. As expected of UA. Tenyu claps his hands together in an effort to get a standing ovation from the rest of the class. He's the only one that gives a round of applause. Is he really gonna teach us? Hanta smiles a bit more broadly than Jiro as he glances around the room to gauge everybody else's reactions to All Might as their teacher. The pink girl with horns adorning the top of her head points out the outdated suit that the hero chose to wear. That's his Silver Age costume. It's a uniform that gives nostalgia but a questionable choice during the modern day. A red and yellow mismatch of muscle expands and contracts as the mighty hero gives a hearty guffaw in response to the children's reactions. Izuku marvels as his idol silences them all by sheer laughter alone, commanding respect without throwing around his authoritative position. It's good that you're all so lively. You're going to need that energy for today's activity. All Might reaches behind his back before brandishing two cards in each hand. Hanji reads training on the left and battle on the right. All Might sweat drops before switching the two and correcting his presentation. Battle training. The announcement gets the class hyped enough to completely overlook and dismiss the mistake, much to the hero's relief. No time to dally. Basic hero training is a class that will put you through all sorts of exercises to mold you into heroes. He rolls with the crowd's wave of cheers before tossing the labeled cards over his massive shoulders and replacing them with a tiny remote. You were wondering why I wore my old costume? Well, because today you'll be adorning your own outfits. All Might presses a button on the small device, and cubicle lockers begin descending from the ceiling over each respective student's desk. A round of awe overcomes the teens when they witness the spectacle of technology. In accordance with the quirk registry and the special request forms that all of you filled out before being admitted, these are. All Might tells them all what's inside each of their private containers before they even have the opportunity to look inside them. Costumes. A large margin of the class cheer together while they each begin opening their lockers. Vacuum-sealed bags lay stacked atop the other in the bins, clothes distributed evenly, and any support items stowed away in a separate slot. Izuku clutches his own uniforms bagging closely to his chest. He remembers a time when he was younger that he had fantasized what his hero suit would look like. Being such an All Might fanboy, most of his early designs were just rehashes or cheap replicas of the number one hero. After getting his quirk and maturing with age though, Izuku started to think more practically. Izuku rolls up the sleeves of his white dress shirt, folding them at the cuff, and then refolding them until they reach his elbows. It was either a zipper or buttons for him to have easy access to the ripcord fixed to his chest. He went with a button down, considering the look could be less conspicuous than a straight-up jumpsuit. To appear a little more formal, Izuku included a black tie. His father had never taught him how to wear one properly, that it hangs loosely, but it matches the untucked hem of his shirt in a sense of style. When Izuku reconjoins with everybody else, he's relieved to see a variety of peers that went both ways, so he doesn't have to worry about feeling like the odd one out. He's especially glad to find out Kyoka's costume is much like his own in terms of appearing like ordinary clothes. The girl wears a black leather jacket despite the sweltering sun's heat, which makes the boy chuckle. Her boots have stereos built into their shafts, no doubt for her quirk's optimization. And Izuku's eyes can't help but be drawn to the choker around her neck. Kyoka gives him a once-over during the same time that he takes in her fashion sense. Plain approach, huh? Her smile turns slightly sly as her eyes travel towards his messy tie. Suits you. Having had prior experience fixing her father's ties, she adjusts it properly for him. Though this looks a bit better, Izuku blushes only a little bit, much to his credit, when she invades his space to help him. The boy tries to redirect his gaze elsewhere while he mumbles in his defense, "Your clothes are pretty normal too, you know." Kyoka raises a single eyebrow before backing away. "That's not very nice." Her hands go on her hips while she feigns offense. "Shouldn't you know that you're always supposed to tell a girl she looks nice?" Izuku blinks when he returns his gaze to her. He has to quickly look away again. "You do." His next mumble comes with a blush that has Kyoka keeping her brow raised. Izuku shifts from foot to foot before clarifying, "Look nice, I mean." Kyoka's blush matches the same hue as her salmon pink shirt. It's her turn to look away, completely embarrassed by the compliment. Shut it. She raises her jacks as a threat when she senses his eyes still on her. Not the neck. Izuku covers his throat with his hands to avoid getting jabbed by the weaponized jacks. However, by defending only that part of his body, he leaves his torso exposed. "My kidney." He feels a jolt go through him when Kyoka uses her quirk to blast his side with the vibration of her heartbeat. While Izuku cradles in on himself, he completely misses the arrival of another. "Whoa, looking fancy." A feminine voice aimed at him is his only way of knowing somebody else has joined him and Kyoka in their conversation. He hadn't anticipated that. "Didn't expect that from you, Deku," but nothing could have prepared him for that same girl to use his childhood nickname either. Izuku sits up, the pain in his side from Kyoka's attack long forgotten. What did you just call me?" His voice sounds distant from him while he tries to catch up with what he just heard a classmate address him as. It's the girl with a brunette bob, the one that he rescued from the zero-pointer. She's wearing some sort of skin-tight black and pink space-themed suit that shows off her body's shape. "Deku? Isn't that your name?" But Izuku is more fixated on the words leaving her mouth rather than the rest of her. "Why would you think that?" He can't help but let some of his frustration slip into his tone when he recalls all the years of bullying he had to endure with that nickname. The girl picks up on his mood and loses her oblivious bubbliness, joy bursted by nerves. She anxiously wrings her hands together while saying, "Bakugo was calling you that earlier, so I thought." It's a cruel nickname that means useless, but Izuku hears enough that he stops her mid-sentence. He's not sure if his former friend is spreading rumors or trying to start trouble, but he shoots the blonde a glare regardless. Kitsuki returns the look with a glower of his own. Noticing the tension between the two boys and realizing that she made a grave mistake, the brunette hastily tries to apologize. She steps towards Izuku to grab his arm. "Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't." "Shall we begin, Zygotes?" But All Might crashing down like a comet interrupts any and all conversations that Class 1 is having. An epic pickup of dust sweeps through the small crowd, anyone with capes or hair exposed having both blown into disarray. All Might shouts over everyone's coughing as they fan away the fine particles onto indoor anti-personnel battle training. But we're outdoors. The girl resembling a frog tentatively raises her hand to gain All Might's attention. She notably wears a green wetsuit to match her theme and overall aesthetic. All Might scratches the top of his head between the two large tufts of hair that spring up like a set of bunny ears. Well, villain battles are most commonly seen outdoors. However, statistically, the most heinous of villains are more likely to hide away indoors. He gestures to the buildings that they'll soon be entering, as though that resolves the girl's comment. But all the hero does is pose more potential inquiries. "They are?" A disembodied voice comes from somewhere amongst the collection of students. It takes All Might a moment to realize the person that spoke is completely invisible, only a pair of shoes and gloves to prove their existence. "How come we never hear anything about that?" A boy with a fit physique like his teacher glances around at his peers as though they might know the answer to his question. Black market deals, house arrest, the works. The clever villains lurk in the shadows. Trust me. But All Might beats them to the punch. Before any more interruptions can stall his momentum, the hero carries on with his lesson. You'll now be split into hero teams and villain teams, so you can face off in 2-on-2 indoor battles. So no basic training. The frog girl tilts her head to the side inquisitively without raising her hand for permission to speak this time. All Might clenches his fist as though he's crushing a stress ball that nobody else can see, while he blows off the question with the answer. Practical experience teaches you the basics. Like the robots during the entrance exam. The shortest of the class draws All Might's heightened gaze downwards towards the boy with balls atop his head. All Might flicks his index finger forward to point at the boy, singling him out to state firmly, the distinct difference being that you won't be fighting robots, young man. Izuku finds himself subconsciously nodding, thinking about the damage that can be done with his quirk and the intense contrast between machine and human. Fuck the difference, but not everybody in his class shares that same sentiment. Especially not Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku frowns when he sees his childhood bully popping off a few sparks via explosive quirk. Can't I just blow everyone away? All Might opens his mouth to respond to the blonde, but gets interrupted by the girl with the pointed ponytail. What determines victory? At least she has the decency to raise her hand. Are you going to threaten to expel someone like Mr. Aizawa did? Not like the brunette girl who keeps her arms tied at her sides. She nervously looks up at All Might, expecting the same treatment as their homeroom teacher. How do we proceed to divide ourselves into teams? Tenya chops in a straight solid line with his hand, as though he's splitting the groups himself. He stands at the center of the class, trying to draw All Might's attention from the other questions to have his own answered. How fabulous is my cape? But a boy covered in glitter and sparkling armor outshines Tenya like a living spotlight. The shawl in question flails around with extravagant gestures to draw everybody's eyes. Holy shit, these kids are killing me faster than my injury, All Might grumbles through gritted teeth as he places a heavy hand over his left side. Before anyone else can bombard him with any more questions, he shouts over them all, just a moment. And takes the time to flip through a manual. Everyone is shocked to see the teaching booklet that the number one hero frantically searches for answers. But what shocks them even more is when he snaps it shut to reclaim control of the situation. Listen up. Here's the deal. The villains have a bomb to guard, and the heroes have to retrieve it. There's a limited amount of time for either team to successfully capture the other or achieve those objectives. The frog-like girl slowly starts raising her hand from her crouched position. What about? Your battle partners will be decided by drawing lots. But All Might cuts her off when he pulls a set of boxes seemingly out of thin air. Any other questions before we proceed? The hero is just as quick to end the string of inquiries before anyone else can try interjecting. No. Great. Much to the frog girl's disdain, but the first team is comprised of Midoriya and Uraraka. All Might draws 2 balls from the first box to begin creating duos. Izuku looks around his classmates before identifying Uraraka as the brunette girl he's already relatively acquainted with. They will be. All Might reaches into the other small crate before announcing, villains. Izuku feels a twinge in his chest. He tells himself it's all by chance, not done deliberately. Yet, he can't help but succumb to a mood swing. Any excitement he had felt about technically meeting All Might and engaging with his classmates during hero training dissipates. All he can see is Katsuki's cocky grin aimed his way. All he can hear is the echo in the back of his mind that he's on the villain team. They'll be up against. And the situation only worsens for him when All Might announces his opponent, Bakugo. Izuku almost misses hearing who Katsuki's teammate will be, Aniida. His mind falling further into a spiral of distraught emotions. He doesn't listen to All Might declaring the other teams, nor does he fully comprehend going through the motions of preparing for the start of the first round. He vaguely recalls Kyoka's encouragement when he finally comes to at the actual battlegrounds, but by then it's too late to thank her. His partner, Uraraka, looks at him with concern as she removes the visor covering her face. Are you okay? She stares at him with auburn eyes that seem sincere enough to Izuku that he relaxes in her company. Though anxiety lingers over him still due to Bakugo. Yeah, Izuku's response is an unconvincing whisper that keeps Uraraka staring. He clears his throat and tries sounding more resolved as he says louder, thanks for asking. The brunette takes the hint, nodding. So. Bakugo is the one that gave you that mean nickname, huh? She surprises Izuku when she expresses herself as having a lot of energy with a fist pump. Let's use this as an opportunity to get back at him. The boy blinks back his shock as she explains, I don't like that he tricked me into calling you something you don't like, so I'd like a little payback myself. It won't be so easy, but Izuku diverts his focus from her to the dark hallway ahead of them. He half expects his enemy to come flying out of it already. He'll be coming for me regardless of what Iida says. The boy's gaze flicks back to the fake nuclear weapon that they're supposed to guard, plus we've got the bomb to protect. So it's like you and Bakugo are fated rivals then. You two will duke it out one-on-one. Your Rakamime's having a boxing match by jabbing at the air. When she sees Izuku isn't quite as enthused by the prospect of fighting his childhood bully, she simmers down. Does that mean you'll be using your quirk? The girl tries to be as delicate as possible as she treads the topic of his quirk like thin ice. Izuku looks down at himself, placing a hand over his chest. He feels the rise and fall of it as he breathes. Probably not, his voice is distant while his mind wanders to the past. Bakugo. He's a jerk, but I can't risk killing him when he's finally finished reflecting. Izuku drops his hand and refocuses on your rocket to ask, what about you? What's your quirk? At that, the brunette perks right back up. Oh. I can make things float. She lightly taps on the fake nuke to demonstrate. The object lifts into the air and levitates in place just like she said. So long as all 5 of my fingers touch the item, each digit twiddles on her hand before she brings them together and deactivates her quirk. Izuku hums as he places his hand to his chin to come up with a strategy. The bomb is made of paper match, so it's not too heavy already, but that'll help make it a bit more mobile. He thinks aloud so that his partner can follow along. Iida is fast. I recognize his name as part of the Ingenium family. Whoa, really? She interrupts with an exclamation of shock upon discovering her classmate is related to a pro hero. Izuku nods and gestures for her to settle down. Yes, but listen. He's fast, so you're gonna have to stay ahead of him and not sit in one place if we're to split up. He glances over his shoulder to look down the hallway ahead of them. He suddenly wishes they had explored the facility a bit more to know the layout better. Got it? That's a good plan. Uraraka nods along and gives her teammate a thumbs up in approval of his idea. She doesn't share his concerns about going into the battle ill-prepared. And he doesn't have the chance to change that problem, since the buzzing alarm that indicates the match has begun goes off right then and there. I'm glad you think so, cause we just ran out of time to come up with another one. He sighs solemnly as he runs a hand through his hair in worry. Good luck. Uraraka remains optimistic though. She uses her quirk on the paper match nuke and starts carrying it upstairs. You too, he responds just loud enough for her to hear before heading in the opposite direction. He figures the least he could do is try luring the enemy team away from her to stall for time. Izuku waits until he's descended a few floors before pausing to remove his shoes. He hopes that this will stop his footfalls from echoing every time he steps on the concrete ground. He also stops to undo his tie, wrapping the cloth around a hand before closing it into a fist. The moment of preparation quells some of his nerves before he continues moving stealthily down the stairs. When Izuku rounds the next corner though, he has only a mere second to react. An explosion aimed right at his face blinds him as he ducks down to avoid taking the full brunt of the blast. The force of the detonation drives him back, and some of the fire is just too close to avoid that his clothes get singed along with his hair. Through the ash and soot is none other than Katsuki Bakugo, the blonde boy's outfit comprised of grenade gauntlets and tactical military gear. Nice dodging, Deku. Katsuki grinds out a sarcastic snarl through gritted teeth. Izuku spares a look behind the savage boy to see if Tenya is with him, but figures the blonde must have gone rogue when finding nobody. I knew you'd come for me alone. Izuku doesn't know whether to smile or sneer back at his old friend turned bully. He settles for a bitter laugh while getting into a fighting stance. Katsuki rears his right arm back, winding up for a punch. I'll fuck you up just enough not to get disqualified. But his cocky approach is intercepted by Izuku grabbing onto the arm and using it against him. The blonde is hoisted over Izuku's shoulder and flipped onto his back. You always lead with a right hook, Izuku explains how he was able to see the boy's move coming from a mile away, before raising his fists to continue the fight and fixing his opponent with a glare. I've seen it enough times to know. You fucker. Katsuki angrily gets to his feet to attack again. The rage-fueled charge is something Izuku sees coming in advance too. He pulls his tie through each hand to extend it while bending low to counter Katsuki. Izuku then uses the thin cloth to trip the blonde by wrapping it around his ankle and pulling. Itsuki stumbles, landing on his shoulder before righting himself. The blonde's instinct takes over and he lets off a controlled blast to ward Izuku away. Though small, the explosion takes its toll and blows Izuku into the nearest wall. Smoke billows between both boys as they heave themselves to standing positions. Use your shitty dog's quirk already. Kitsuki lashes out with more miniature bursts. Izuku leans away from them, avoiding the full force of the blasts. His clothes continue to get scorched though, along with the blemishes across his skin. A boot plants itself between Izuku's ribs, kicking him into the handrail of the staircase thereby. You don't belong here with that villainous quirk. Itsuki's shouts are louder than the ringing in Izuku's ears as he dodges the next assault. I'm the villain. Izuku gasps as he staggers back. His face contorts into an angry expression that challenges Kitsuki's. You're the one who can create explosions and use them to terrorize me when we were younger. His bitter bite is met by a roar from the blonde before another eruption of flame destroys a wall's foundation. Izuku rolls across the floor, fragments of cement pelting him when he lands on his back. He hardly has the time to turn over before Kitsuki pursues him with another assault. I'm gonna bring the villain out of you and show you. Izuku takes a punch that rattles his jaw before being blown into another room. The explosions coming from Kitsuki up till now were deliberate, each one meant to destroy the cameras recording their battle, as much as they had been directed towards Izuku. If you're worried about everyone else seeing, don't worry, I only want you to realize the truth about yourself. Kitsuki stomps towards the impact hole he created to yell into it. He hoists the heavy gauntlet attached to his arm upwards to rest in his other hand. The pin to the grenade-shaped device rests on his finger like a trigger. The dark smog wafting from the damaged infrastructure conceals Izuku, but Kitsuki knows the boy is somewhere in there. Come here, Deku. Let me teach you how we do battle in the hero course. Kitsuki yells into the void again to goad his enemy. The grin overcomes the blonde's facial features when he hears vitriolic vengeance reverberating as the sound of a chainsaw's ignition. The flurry of spinning metal teeth that barrels through the smoke yells back, come on then. Teach me. Now that will be unfortunately all for today's video, but do not worry, more will be coming soon for you to enjoy. Golden Fanfics out.